Welcome to the Senate E12 Finance and Policy Committee. Today is March 13th, 2019. We have a quorum and we have a full house here as well. Our agenda today, members, we have 7 bills before us today. So we're going to ask our testifiers to try and stick to the timeline so we can respect everyone's time. Our first bill, members, is Senate File 299, Senator Chamberlain. Welcome, Senator Chamberlain, and your testifiers. Senator Chamberlain, if you could move your bill and be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill.
Madam Chair and members, I move that Senate File 299 be laid over for possible inclusion in the bill.
Thank you, Senator Chamberlain. Do you have an author's amendment or an amendment today?
We do not, Madam Chair.
All right, Senator Chamberlain, to your bill. Please explain Senate File 299.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. You might recall this is a variation, a changed version from last year's school rating system. The main difference this year is we eliminated all the specifics. We simply turn over the responsibility to the Department of Education to give them the flexibility to work within the current system to create the 5-star rating system. The bill itself, quickly, we delete, in the first page, we strike district-wide because that's the only way this will work. We have to do a statewide assessment, and we want to use the MCAs for that, otherwise it doesn't work. Second page is obsolete language that we're removing. Excuse me, water, I ran out of cough drops. Okay. And fourth page, I'm sorry. That's where we instruct the commissioner to create a 5-star achievement reward rating system. And we ask her to she has the flexibility to work within the ESSA or within the World's Best Workforce requirements. Also expedited rulemaking to have some public hearings. And then as you go through, it talks about the 5 stars. And page 5, simply posting it, public notice, and reports to the legislature. So, Madam Chair and members, that's the quick once over the bill. And it's simply about parents getting clear information. They have the right to clear information to make good decisions about the schools they want their kids to go to. And that's all this is. And again, we got rid of all those other controversial items. This puts it in the commissioner's hands to create the system and go from there. And the citizens will greatly appreciate it. With that, I'd like to give up the time to the 2 testifiers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Chamberlain. We'll start with our testifiers. Welcome to the committee. Mr. Sellers, please introduce yourself for the tape.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. My name is Daniel Sellers. I serve as Executive Director of the statewide education advocacy nonprofit at Allies. As Senator Chamberlain mentioned, the major difference between Senate File 299 and the Summative Ratings bill this committee heard last year is that this bill does not specify exactly which numbers or data points will make up a school rating or how those components will be weighted. Instead, the bill simply directs Commissioner Ricker and MDE staff with community input to create a rating system to help parents make sense of all the data the state collects on school performance. Summative ratings would not replace the current MDE report card, but instead would serve as an entry point into the report card. We know there are many factors that tell the story of a school, but we also know that parents are desperate for a starting point, a way to make sense of all the information that's collected in our state's report card. Community members and families use performance information for many reasons, not just for choosing which school to attend, but to participate in school improvement. How can we expect families, and particularly families who have been historically marginalized, to engage in helping schools improve if we don't provide clear, concise information about how the schools are doing right now? Finally, we believe that school ratings should be user-friendly and based on multiple factors that align with school performance, not simply test scores. Ultimately, the summative rating likely will not be the only source of information that families use, but it can be an essential tool, an important first step to help families make sense of how a school is doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sellers. Mr. Turner, welcome to the committee. If I could have the next testifier come up as Mr. Sellers is leaving, we'll keep things moving here. Mr. Turner, introduce yourself for the tape, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Rashad Turner, Director of Community Engagement for an education nonprofit called Minnesota Comeback. My role as the Director of Community Engagement is to do a lot of outreach to communities across this state. I've heard loud and clearly from many families that they are in support of this bill for the main reason of having something that's simple, easy to understand, and gives them a starting point on making the best decision for their kids. If you think about the historical context of this country when it comes to education, it has been an oppressive system. I challenge you all to think long and hard about which side of history you want to be on when it comes time to vote for this bill. You will hear from parents today who are not here to just be a part of the choir and make this a kumbaya session. They have demands. I ask that you listen to their demands and not disregard their voices, as Senator Kent did last year. These are intelligent individuals who care about their kids. We ask that you respect that, respect their voices, and make the right decision in making this information available. There's no one sitting in this room that could right now go on the Department of Education website and easily find information. But we're all aware that the information's out there. So how do we make it simple? This bill right here. A summative rating that will give parents an opportunity to say, hey, I'd like to look into this school a little bit more. We know it's not the end-all be-all, but it is a starting point. And as we change this education system to work for all families, not just some, it starts with information. So again, I ask you to think very deeply about which side of history you want to be on. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. And I can guarantee you that every member at this table is listening intently and has the best interest of all of our students at heart. I can also tell you, and you can just look at the room that is standing room only here, that we have Minnesotans from all across this state who are incredibly interested in our children, our students. Their futures are very much tied to their educational achievement and opportunities. And I can promise you that there is not one person in this room who is not interested in making sure that all students have a great education. And also, I am sure that every one of us will endeavor to make sure that every decision we make is on the right side of history. So I want to make sure that there's no misunderstanding about that. And I greatly appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Committee.
Madam Chair,
Senator Kent.
if I may just say one quick thing, and I want to thank you for your comment,
Yes.
because you're right, and you know very well that we are all deeply committed to making sure that our schools are good and that parents have great information
Yes,
about our schools.
to your comments, Senator Kent.
And that is exactly what I want to say. I have supported better information from all of our schools for our parents for a number of years now. How we get there is still a question for discussion, and I think this bill is a very big improvement over the bill that we saw last year, and I look forward to coming out with a really good outcome this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kent. Our next testifier, welcome to the committee. If you would kindly introduce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kulia Pringle. I am a parent and a Minneapolis family advocate. What I do is I support Minneapolis families one-on-one through their educational journey from K through 12 for free. And that includes going to conferences with parents, advocating with them. I also educate them, and then I also organize them around education issues. I'm here to support this bill today for a summative assessment rating system. I testified last year in support of the bill, and it didn't make it through. And I'm happy with the changes, again, with the indicators that would give Minnesota Department of Education an opportunity to use the indicators that's already in ESSA and World's Best Workforce, because those indicators are have built-in equity within them. So I'm okay with those indicators being a part of the summative assessment rating bill. I also I'm also here to demand transparency. A lot of the pushback that I got last year from Senator Kent was parents weren't smart enough, test scores aren't everything.
Oh,
And like
Ms.
Rashad-
Pringle, could you confine your comments to the bill today?
Okay.
I wasn't in that hearing I wasn't a part of that, and so
Okay.
it's not going to help us know about today's
Okay.
bill. So just focus on today's bill if you kindly would. Thank you so much.
No problem. I'm here to demand the transparency. As Rashad said, the data's already out here. Right now, the dashboard is confusing. If the school is in the bottom 5%, most parents don't know. And I think a 1 through 5, A through F, or a 0 to 100 rating system will give parents an easier way of understanding the data. The data is already out there. It's just hard to understand. And I think families have a right to not only have access to the data, but they have a right to understand the data. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm here to demand transparency.
Thank you, Ms. Pringle. Next, we have Susan Montgomery,
Yes.
a parent. Welcome
Yes,
to the committee.
Thank you.
Please
Good
introduce
afternoon,
yourself.
Madam Chair Nelson and committee members. My name is Susan Montgomery. I'm a single disabled parent and community advocate for education rights. I'm here today on behalf of my son, Tay, who is currently an 8th grader in Roseville Area School District. As a student who identifies Black and has an IEP, he has really been through some negative experiences with schools. Currently, he is on his 5th district in 6 years and 17th school-related program in 10 years. He has been a victim of educational neglect, system abuse, police brutality, discrimination, and other violence while attending Minnesota public schools. I believe if he was given the same opportunities and choices as other students, he would have been more successful in his journey. All things considered, he is doing very well now, but it has come with a cost. These issues have contributed to opportunity and educational gaps, which is long-lasting trauma to kids like mine. There is huge racial disparities and implicit bias in our education system, along with failing schools. We are not often given information or choices to better our students. Some of the ones my son has attended are labeled poor, many at the state's bottom 5%, but that isn't always public knowledge. Many of us find out hard, long ways, which is causing students like mine to fall through the cracks. There is little positive direction or proper protocol for many schools and options for families who may not have the resources or ability to attend top schools. We lack consistency, support services for transitions, finances, and transportation. I'm asking you to support Senate File 299 so that all kids are able to succeed equally and that parents have transparency along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Montgomery, and thank you for advocating for your child. There's no one stronger than a parent to do so. Next, I think we have Mustafa, and the next testifier, Diri. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, but you're going to correct me, I presume. So, Mustafa, welcome to the committee, and the next person on the list is Amy Gadara.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair, and all the committee. Thank you for having me. My name is Mustafa Diria, not diarrhea. Many people use the diarrhea word. I'm just joking. It's
Thank
a
you,
diarrhea.
Mustafa.
Thank you. No problem. Thank you. I'm here today to support. My name is Mustafa, again, I said, and I am a family advocate. I support, like Kulia and Rashad and so many others say. I represent a portion of the Americans who usually their needs or their complaints are not 5 o'clock news. They don't, nobody listen to them. So those are the voices I represent. And like Kulia say, I'm here to say those families, those parents, they support this rating system, which is fair, which is something that every human being who have a common sense will want it. We want to improve the system. This is one way to improve it. And let me go back 1 second and say, I come from a family of long educators. My dad was a professor, 30 years. I have a brother who's running his 20 years in education, educator. We are not against this is not a group versus other group. I think there's a lot of not right information running around. We basically simply saying families who have difficulties to understand this complex system, this is easy way for them to look at and which way they can put, which school they choose for their children. And this is simply easy way for them to navigate this system. Simple is that. And I don't want people to look at the other way of, I will repeat this because I see many people think this is just looking for other issue. No, we're not. Last year, I testified here again, and it did not go through. I hope this year it will. It should be, because the many families are demanding. And you should not only listen and take the words of the people who have a deep pocket and have influence, but also the simple mom and dads who work at jobs and are trying to find their kids a better life. This is the simple way, this is easier way, this is a common sense way, and we are demanding transparency and honest. Last year I put 30 plus families over there. You saw some of you who was last year. Please pay attention and be generous and be responsible for those families. You have a responsibility and you have to do your job the right way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mustafa. Certainly, education is the great equalizer. That's why we have a room full of people here today.
If you all
Thank you.
give a fair share of it.
Yes.
Yes, that's the
Ms.
point.
Gadara, welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Madam Chair, distinguished
Yes, Ms.
members
Gadara.
of the committee, hello, and welcome. Thank you very much for welcoming me today. I'm Amy Gadara. I'm president of Gadara Strategy. And like the people who preceded me at this testifying table, I'm a parent, a taxpayer, and a voter that needs, I want, and I deserve greater transparency around my daughter's schools and our community schools so that I can make better decisions that lead to better outcomes for my own children and for all children. I've spent my entire career working in education to improve student achievement and specifically to focus on closing the achievement gap. My 30 years in this work and in this world have convinced me that that's not possible to do unless we change how we value and how we use data. And before stepping down as the CEO of the Data Quality Campaign last year, which is a national nonprofit that focuses on the importance of education data, I worked to change data from being used and seen as a hammer and instead being used as a flashlight. That's what this bill is all about. It's about changing the role of data in Minnesota to be a flashlight and not a hammer. We have the opportunity in Minnesota to provide the public in general, and parents in particular, with more understandable, more actionable, and more tailored information about their schools than ever before. Currently, it's just too hard to find, to understand, or to act on the information that's presented in the current school report cards. The summative rating, which is proposed in this bill, will make it easier for people to understand how well a school is serving all children and their own children, and therefore will be able to take informed actions. Think of it almost as a good housekeeping seal of approval, and think about the fact that it is easier for me to find information on my eye creams than it is for me to find information on my kids' schools. It should not be that way. There's a good issue on eye cream in here, by the way. Minnesota will also be in line, if we act on this bill, to be in line with the growing base of research highlighting that parents want this summative rating. The Data Quality Campaign just last year, and you have this in your packets, released information for the third year in a row showing that 90% of parents say that the school's summative performance rating helps them make decisions related to their own child's education. Learning Heroes, another national nonprofit, just put out research in December that I encourage you also to look at, showing that having access to a summative rating actually changes how parents view their own kids' information and causes them to ask more questions about what's happening in their schools and leading them to be more involved about how the school itself is helping them. Minnesota will also be joining the growing number of states who are moving towards the summative ratings. DQC is about ready to release its update on its school report cards next week, and it will show that 26 states now are including summative ratings in the report cards. These states are listening to their customers. Minnesota should listen to their customers too. I urge you to support greater transparency and to ensure that data is being used as a tool to inform and to empower. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Gadara. Next on the list is Mr. Corte from the Minnesota Department of Education. And also, if we could have Kim Lewis, MSBA. Ms. Assistant Commissioner, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Madam Madam Chair, members, Darren Cordy, I'm an Assistant Commissioner at the Minnesota Department of Education. I want to thank you and Senator Chamberlain for giving us the opportunity to testify on Senate File 299. We do support the changes that you have on lines 2.3 to 2.21, eliminating that obsolete language. We think that that's a good thing to do since it doesn't align with our current accountability system. I would also want to point out that there are references to low, medium, and high growth in 120B 299 and 120B.36 that would also need to be removed if you remove that old growth measure. We do have some concerns with the star rating system as it's laid out in this bill. First, as you know, we did extensive stakeholder engagement as part of the development of the state's ESSA plan, and broadly, stakeholders did not express an interest in a star rating system or any summative rating system for that matter. Most stakeholders reported they felt that that was a punitive system and shaming in nature. The star rating system was recommended by a small subset of stakeholders, but again, broadly, it was not supported. Second, under Minnesota's new North Star accountability system, we are reporting accountability in a way so families and communities can get a clear picture of how schools and districts are doing. Boiling that down to a simple 1 through 5 stars disregards the nuances that exist in schools. So for example, say a school is struggling with math proficiency rates but has a nationally recognized music or arts program, there's no way a parent would know that by looking at a 1 to 5 rating system. There's no algorithm that we can develop at the department that would measure student experiences. Third, transparency and data reporting can and should be accomplished through the school report card and how we present and visualize data. Made great strides in the past year to update our report card to provide more reliable information in a more family-friendly manner. In addition to accountability data, the report card provides data on student engagement, challenging coursework, staffing profiles, and rates of college enrollment. It also includes the ability for school leaders to provide a message directly to parents explaining the school's vision and learning philosophy. And in the future, we plan to add student discipline data and fiscal transparency data to the school report card. Again, all this data combined just can't be boiled down to a simple star rating system. Fourth, creating a star rating system alongside our approved ESSA accountability system could send mixed and confusing messages to communities and families. We've seen this happen in other states where a school might show up as good in one system and okay or bad in another system. And this isn't, we want to make sure that we're presenting consistent messages to parents. And lastly, the implementation dates in the bill are problematic for us. Between the stakeholder engagement we would have to do, the developing the measure, going through the rulemaking process, running the measures, identifying or assigning ratings, publishing them to the report card, we would need at least 2 years from the bill signing to accomplish this goal. And you've all seen the fiscal note that it would come at a cost of nearly $2 million over the biennium with another $1 million in the tails. Just to close, the Federal Department of Education has moved away from the NCLB style of oversimplified accountability, and so is our state. We want to expand the way that we talk about schools with our communities and not minimize it. We think the best way to do that is to provide parents with more information and not less. So I thank you for your time and would welcome any questions you might have.
Mr. Corday, I noticed that you support striking the language on page 2 about value-added growth. And the growth model is critically important if we're going to measure how much a student learns instead of just where they started. I speak to you as a former special education teacher and a Title I teacher. To see kids grow 2 years in 1 year of time is something that we should be celebrating and encouraging more of that. But with the model that you have, if you get rid of the growth model, those students would still be marked as being below grade average, even though they, in some cases, had learned far more than a year's worth of growth. The fact that they're still below grade level, they would, I just fear that, I'd like to know why you're interested in striking the growth model growth model indicators as part of this record. Mr. Corday.
Madam Chair, the existing growth model that we use to measure schools under the ESSA accountability system, the North Star accountability system, is significantly different from this. So we would still continue to measure and report student growth. We agree that that's extremely important to do, but this is an old measure that's been in statute for a number of years and hasn't been updated to reflect the updated accountability system under ESSA.
Thank you. It's important we keep that growth model. Next, we have Ms. Lewis.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and thank you for the time to be here. My name is Kim Lewis. I'm with Minnesota School Boards Association. In December of 2015, the Every Student Succeeds Act replaced No Child Left Behind. MSBA welcomed the transfer of the authority under ESSA to the states. MDE's statewide accountability plan was developed with meaningful input from stakeholders. As MDE began development, one message from stakeholders was very clear. This new era of school accountability was an opportunity to leave the punitive NCLB system behind. Stakeholders like us embraced the idea of adopting a reporting system more like a data dashboard that would give a more accurate picture of our schools as opposed to being categorized into one summative score. Stakeholders shared in the numerous focus groups. They wanted something different from the one indicator system, such as the STAR system that was under NCLB. MSBA is concerned a system providing 1 or 5 stars does not provide the transparency or information sought. Parents and educators have diverse interests and needs in information. A dashboard gives them access more quickly to data they may want. The at-a-glance section MDA adds provides an opportunity for schools to highlight things offered that are not articulated through the other measures on the report card. A star rating system using primarily MCA measures of reading and math achievement may very well cause Minnesota schools to double down on reading and math MCA prep. A single indicator, such as test scores, viewed out of context can be misleading as a measure of performance. Minnesota has had a dozen of years of this behavior. This will take Minnesota schools away from considerations of a well-rounded education and back to the over-reliance on a single-day test scores. MSBA is confident the dashboard reflects a more complete, transparent picture of the teaching and learning that schools are daily engaged in. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Andrea Kuhn, welcome to the committee. Please
Thank
introduce
you.
yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Andrea Keene, and I'm testifying in opposition to this bill on behalf of the Association of Metro School Districts. I serve as a school board member for Wayzata Public Schools and Intermediate District 287. As a school board member, I wear many hats, but my most important responsibility is to listen to the families, the students, teachers, and the communities that I am elected to represent. Some of the other hats I wear include an advocate on our Legislative Action Committee, a member of AMSD, a participant in Reimagine Minnesota, and a participant in some of the ESSA stakeholder meetings. I'm also a mom in a community that is passionate about what happens in our schools. I'm concerned that the academic achievement rating system proposed in Senate File 299 does not align with the priorities shared with me by my school community. What I hear is that parents want to know that their children's education is comprehensive, that it is safe, and that it's engaging for their students. They want to know how many AP classes are offered at the high school, about fine arts programming, and if teachers really care about their children. Through Reimagine Minnesota, I learned that our families want our schools to have an understanding of each and every student's background, culture, strengths, and weaknesses, so that an equitable and excellent education can be provided for all students. It is not possible to reflect the richness and the value of our schools with a single rating. Finally, I've had countless parents share their concerns about the mental health of their children, our students. They are afraid that the pressure of school is too much. I worry that reducing the value of a school community to a single rating or a star amount will only increase the pressure that teachers and students already feel about standardized testing. In closing, I want to thank you for your consideration of my perspective.
Thank you, Ms. Keene. Dr. Nolan, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. I'm Fred Nolan, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Rural Education Association, representing 231 Greater Minnesota school districts, including 36 of our 48 Greater Minnesota regional center cities that have significantly more commercial industrial property employment opportunities for adults of all skills than surrounding smaller or suburban-type school districts. Students attending these regional center schools can take advantage of a greater variety of course offerings and extracurricular activities. They are learning and making friends within a diverse student demographic that is representative of America and Minnesota's changing demographics. MDE's dashboard type of school board report and invitation from school leaders currently on the report card reflect the richness of opportunity for parents to see the full scope of a child's potential education when they're choosing schools and locations to live. In contrast, a rating system based largely on grades 3 through 8 MCA test scores for proficiency and achievement gaps provides a smaller slice of student experiences, and it is a slice on which the regional centers often perform worse than their neighbors. There's already an open enrollment outflow of students from regional center schools to their neighbors, and it's well documented by the Center for Rural Policy and Development. I fear that a single point rating system based on elementary test scores will accelerate this already troubling trend. I ask you consider this very, very carefully before proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan. Mr. Amoroso, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Gary Amoroso, Executive Director of the Minnesota Association of School Administrators. I want to thank the chair for allowing us to share a few thoughts. I know that we're short on time. I do want to thank Senator Chamberlain for making the modifications to the bill that he made. But even with those modifications, we still have some concerns about the bill. I just want to share that as administrators, we fully embrace accountability. That is nothing we shy away from. Many of our members were actively involved in the creation of the current process that is being implemented with the North Star system. I had the opportunity to sit in on many of those committee meetings and to hear what our committee, excuse me, what the committee members were saying. And I need to say that the people at those meetings were not just school administrators, school teachers, but we had a lot of parents and community members participating in those meetings also. And I remember the conversations about the concept of having a singular rating, whether it be A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to go on the card, and that was not embraced. Yes, there were some people that felt that was important, but when you looked at the totality of the groups, that was not something that was embraced. And it wasn't just school personnel. I'm talking about community members, parents also. I just want to share that a simpler, easier system does not equate to being accurate. And we want to make sure that our parents have accurate information in order to make decisions. As I interacted with parents and continue to interact with parents, the thing I hear is, how is my child doing? How is my child being successful? What are the challenges that my child is facing? And those are the interactions that take place between parent and child and the school system and the school teacher. And so we're concerned that if you have a system that is built mainly on achievement, what about the areas of attendance? What about the areas of dropout rates? What about advanced course offerings? Those types of things that all play into what makes up what is going on within the school. So with that, Madam Chair and members of the committee, we'd ask that the North Star system that has only been operational this year be given a chance and to continue to work to make sure that our parents are getting the most accurate information which provides a picture of what's going on not only in the school, but what's going on with the children, the child that is being served. With that, Madam Chair, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amoroso. And I would just note that there are many systems in place already, whether it be Zillow or Chambers of Commerce. I mean, our schools are being rated, and they're being rated because they are so important. So I just want to note, we want to make sure that we get accurate information, but it is critically important. Welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Tashonda Williamson. I had a prior engagement, so please pardon my tardiness, but I am on the list to testify on today.
I thought it was her. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Are you testifying in favor of this bill, or?
I am. I'm making, I just want, as a parent.
Yes, ma'am, I made a mistake in thinking that you had been on the agenda, and I went by you. So I'm going to grant 2 minutes for your testimony, or I'm so sorry, but we're behind schedule. So if you could continue, but briefly. Thank you.
Yes, will do. Thank you again. I just want to make mention that I am a parent of 3. My children was at a charter school, and that was in our neighborhood. And in regards to looking at the report card, there's no trail of how to go about looking to see the culture, looking to see the climate of the school, especially with the proficiencies. I understand that it's in there somewhere, but it's not readily available. And I believe that in regards to where Minnesota stands in regards to our schools, if we're able to, no matter how ugly it may look, but if we can see what it is, that's how we can then go forth in regards to fixing or enhancing what we have to offer. Because if our students are being cultivated to be the best that they can be, no matter minority or not, it's going to lead for a better society for us all.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your brevity. You were eating into Senator Chamberlain's closing comments, so just want to clear the air on that. All right. Now, members, we are going to take just a few questions briefly. We see we're already behind on the agenda. I want you to know this bill is going to be laid over for possible inclusion. So let's have opportunity for brief comments. Senator Torres-Ray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do appreciate the time to speak on this issue. To the people who testified against this bill, I just would like to call your attention to the room. And I would like to call your attention to the fact that these are parents of our students who have come today and came here earlier and will continue to come, because it just so happened that the majority of these kids we know are not doing well in our schools. And what they are asking us to do is to provide a system of support that allows them to do better. So I want to say thank you, Senator Chamberlain, for your consistency and for bringing this to our attention. I am quite disappointed with the commissioner's message and our assistant commissioner's message and Mr. Amoroso, where you state that the people who attended these meetings were actually not supportive of this issue. I will challenge you to be creative and think about how do you respond to these parents. I do believe that there was support in that committee to actually figure out how do we make our system accountable, the schools accountable to predominantly children of color and indigenous children. The time has come, and we must do that. Our children are not doing well in our public school system. So we have to figure out why, and not having this information in place for parents is not helpful. Actually, it's moving us in the opposite direction. Parents are not trusting our systems. In fact, parents are not even trusting our teachers right now. So this is not moving in the right direction. And we need to put a system of accountability in place that allows us to invest in public education, to support our teachers, to support our public school system. So I support this issue. I believe that we need to be more creative in creating a system of accountability and measures of accountability. And saying no to this is just not helpful, especially with parents of color. Please see the room. See the room and get the message. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No, we do not applaud or clap or any wonderful things in the committee hearing. That is not allowed here. You'll be escorted out. We'll all be welcome to visit with you afterwards. Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Senator Torres-Ray. Next on the agenda, Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Chamberlain. As you know, I've just discussed some concerns with this bill. My school districts in Faribault and Otana have a large number of non-speaking English people, and some of those scores that go into these five-star ratings make our schools look worse. And our schools are not worse. Our schools are good schools down there. We teach well, but when you look at a five-star rating without seeing the data, it makes our schools look bad. As a mayor, I did a lot of economic development to get people to come and live in our communities. We created jobs. And if you looked on the website and saw schools of Faribault would probably be a 2-star in this rating, and a neighboring school not 16 miles away would be a 5-star rating. And what happens is people go to the 5-star rating. It's a simple, quick look at it without looking at the details. And that's my concern with my school district in my district. I know it may be different in the metro, but in greater Minnesota, what it does to my district is it hurts our schools because the information doesn't have all the detail. It doesn't show the demographics. It shows 1-star or 5-star. And I know there are Zillow and things like that that do the same thing, and I understand we're all rated. We get that. But what it does to my school districts is it hurts them, and it hurts them tremendously. We don't get the people to come to school in our district because they go somewhere else because they see a 5-star versus a 2-star because it's easy for them to see that quickly. But if they dig into the data, they see that our school districts are good. It's just that if you have a large population that don't speak or comprehend English as well as others,
Excuse me. There is no talking from the audience. You will be removed from this room if you interrupt this hearing again. Please remove the
Madam Chair, may I just respond quickly to Senator Jasinski's concerns, and then I'll be done.
Senator Chamberlain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Jasinski, we understand those concerns, but the way this is written now, the MDE has great discretion on how they score it and how they set it up. And English ESL is included in that rating system, so it would be part of that total component. So if you have a second language, it is not excluded. It is part of that whole component. So there should be no worry or concern on that part. It'll be part of the whole scoring process. It's not eliminated. But right now, the system is just unusable for so many people. It's just simply unusable. As I cannot add anything more to the testimony of all the people here and to with what Senator Torres Ray has said. She capped it off, so I will leave it at that, but I just wanted to let you know that there are pieces in there that will take care of that for you, Senator Jasinski. Thank you, Madam Chair. I will yield any further time.
Let me be clear for the audience and all members here that all are welcome to comment, to submit comments, but you cannot interrupt the committee. I believe that this bill was scheduled to be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. I would encourage you, if you have further comments, to address them to the committee. You're welcome to send them. We will make sure that every member gets a copy of those committees. And I thank you for your respectful participation today. Senator Chamberlain renews his motion that Senate File 299 be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members. Thank you, testifiers. Thanks.
Next on the agenda, we have Senate File 1861. Senator Utke, welcome to the committee. Senator Utke moves Senate File 1861 be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Senator Utke, to your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would like to start off with the author's amendment, the A1 amendment. If we could have that added to our bill, then we're ready to go.
I offer the A1 amendment. Is this an author's amendment?
Yes, it is.
Your first stop. Senator Utke. Members, all those in favor of the author's amendment signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? No. The A1 is adopted. Your bill is now in the shape that you wish to address it. Senator Utke, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. This is a bill that modifies the student testing provisions. As a number of you will probably remember, we have seen parts of this before last year. The language was in last year's omnibus bill. So to the bill, in Section 1, it directs the Commissioner to establish a testing period as late as possible each year during which schools must administer the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments Test. The Commissioner must also publish the testing schedule at least 2 years before the beginning of the testing period. So, of course, this has to start down the, and you'll see the dates of implementation so that that 2-year period can fall into place. Also in Section 1, you'll notice there's obsolete language which has been removed to bring us up to date. And in paragraph M, it modifies the grade levels for which the Commissioner must establish the derived benchmarks. Section 2 then goes into the reporting. The school districts must disseminate the individual student performance data and achievement report to the parent and teacher of each student no more than 30 days after the district has administered the tests to the student. And the district must also notify the parent and teacher that the data and report are preliminary and subject to validation. And in the following school year, the school district must disseminate the testing report to the teacher and parent of each student. The report must identify the student's achievement level in each content area and track the student's performance history. Members, this bill, as amended, is a common sense piece of legislation. After hearing from teachers, parents, and school leaders, the MCAs can be administered in better ways so that the data is clearer and timelier. Madam Chair, at this point, I would like our testifiers to take over and give us some additional information about this bill.
Thank you, Senator Utke. Mr. Crossan, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joshua Crossan from Ed Allies. I'd like to thank Senator Utke and the committee for entertaining SF 1861. We're in full support of this legislation. A recent report found that 85% of principals and 77% of educators said MCA scores were very or somewhat useful, but only 1/3 do not feel prepared to put them into action. So timely data is important for parents too. To advocate for the right interventions and support for their children at home and at school, parents and educators need objective information on whether their kids are on track. Additionally, the MCAs as a summative assessment should provide a better reflection on how students are learning and growing throughout the entire school year, rather than just 3/4 of the year. We are currently well into our, today we are currently well into our MCA testing window, even though we have about I heard Kara told me 3.5 months left of school. If we want the best picture of what students have learned throughout the entire year, we need to make sure that the tests are administered as late as possible. As Senator Utke referenced, SF 1861 equips parents and teachers with the information they need in a timely manner to be fully and adequately equipped to serve students well. The bill as amended would require MDE to report the testing window with at least 2 years advance notice, and as I understand from the Department of Education, this is something that they already practice. We're just codifying that practice so we can have some consistency. It would require schools to test as late as possible. It would get student test results back to parents and teachers within 30 days of students taking these tests. And it would give parents and teachers a report, a longitudinal report to see how students are doing throughout their academic lives and careers. So thank you again, Senator Utke, for introducing this important piece of legislation. This is a great first step in getting data into the hands of parents and educators, and I'm looking forward to working with each and every one of you to ensure testing and data works best for students. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crossan. Welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senators. My name is Cara Cisco. I am a public school teacher, 15 years. I taught in Chicago and Minneapolis and now in St. Louis Park. I graduated from Eden Prairie, and I am here Because of my experience with data-driven instruction. I regularly lead professional development for teachers like myself, walking them through the process and building capacity to use data in order to inform instruction. I co-lead an educator book club that is focused on race and equity, that we look at the disproportionalities of that data. It's a passion of mine, but I also recognize that the way that we presently collect statewide data is untenable. I am ultimately a supporter of the MCAs, and I think that's important for you to hear. I am also a parent of 2 biracial children, and my husband and I truly value the opportunity to, for the MCAs to shine a light on the systemic inequities that cause racially predictable results in our schools. It's important for us to know who our schools are serving and who they're not serving. However, as an educator, I believe that the MCAs should serve the dual purpose of reporting outcomes, which they do, but also of affording teachers the opportunity to plan and adjust and differentiate and to target supports and ultimately to improve student outcomes. And it's disheartening to put so much time and energy into a test when we oftentimes don't get the results until the next school year. And because teachers have a real need for real-time data, we issue additional assessments, and it puts a huge undue burden on our students and cause testing fatigue for everyone. And I feel that if we could maximize the potential of the MCA, then we could perhaps relieve that need for other summative assessments and then relieve that burden for our teachers. Finally, with our school years, as Josh mentioned, extending way into June in some cases, it just makes logical sense to me in order to move the testing window as late as it can possibly go, just to honor the work that our teachers are doing all year, particularly for teachers who are evaluated based on those scores. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Cisco. Mr. Bartholomew, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Jim Bartholomew with the Minnesota Business Partnership. And thank you also for the opportunity to speak in support of the amended version of Senate File 1861. Through our participation on various working groups convened by MDE or in response to legislative direction, with the goal of identifying improvements in state testing policies, we've frequently heard recommendations to adopt the changes proposed in Senate File 1861. This is especially true for administering the MCAs later in the school year and getting student results to families sooner, even if it's on a preliminary basis. For example, teachers on several of the working groups have argued the MCA should be held later in the school year so they have more time to cover the standards before students are tested, as you've just heard. Giving families student MCA results as soon as possible allows them to get a head start on coordinating and talking with their teachers on how best to work together and support their students. And for teachers, getting preliminary MCA results sooner is largely a district decision, since the MCAs are now administered online for most students. We'd like to thank Senator Utke for addressing many of the most frequently requested changes to the state's testing policies, and would ask that you adopt Senate File 1861.
Thank you, Mr. Bartholomew. Is someone here from the department? Mr. Corte, are you still here? I'm wondering if the department has any concerns or objections. I noticed there's a timeline here, and you testified concerns on the other bill. I'm just curious your comments on this bill, Mr. Corte.
Madam Chair, Darren Cordy again, Assistant Commissioner, Minnesota Department of Education. As Mr. Crossan said, this does codify some of the existing practices we already have. We do attempt to push back the testing window as late as possible in order to, there just is a timeline that is built in so that we can report assessment results statewide with fidelity and accuracy by September 1st, which is a requirement in law. So in order to make sure that we have enough time to have districts verify their data, get it submitted to us, have us verify it and published, that's how we establish where the testing window is. So we already put that as late as we possibly can. And in terms of the testing schedule, yes, we do have that published 2 years in advance. We have a draft for 2021 available for folks to look at right now.
Mr. Corte, will the large number of snow days, 10, 13 in some districts, affect this timeline? Mr. Corte?
Madam Chair, my understanding is that the deadlines will remain the same, which is March 3rd for reading and math, and then March 10th for science.
Thank you. Thank you. Members, any comments, questions? Final comments, Senator Udke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly, I think most everything's been covered. It's hopefully a common sense thing that allows the tests to be taken at a time when the students do get a chance to show what they've learned. It's good for the students, it's good for the teachers, it's good for the parents and the school districts, and hopefully it's something that makes the tests even more credible. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Udke. Senator Udke renews his motion that Senate File 1861 as amended.
Madam Chair, I don't think I can make that motion.
I'm making the motion for you. I am renewing your motion, Senator Udke, that I am renewing my motion that Senate File 1861 as amended be laid on the table for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill.
Thank you very much.
Senator Udke. You don't want to join the Education Committee. I'm sorry about that.
I
All
was
right.
there last year, but unfortunately this year I got to go back to Human Services.
Udke. All right, members. Next we have Senator Goggin, Senate File 1503. I'm not seeing Senator Goggin. It is deadlines week, so members have to be in many places at once. Well, not seeing Senator Goggin, we're going to move on to the next item, which is Senate File 1958. Vice Chair
Madam
James,
Chair?
if you could take that.
Madam
please.
Chair?
Senator Clausen.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick comment on the last bill. The testing window actually opened March 4th, last week.
Thank you, Senator Clausen. We know that I've been in communication with the department, and there can be some possible concerns.
That's
here.
pretty early.
Yes, thank you.
Senator Nelson, if you'd like to go ahead and move Senate File number 1958, I understand it's to be moved to the floor.
Yes, Mr. Chair, committee members, I'd like to move Senate File 1958 be passed and sent to the Senate floor.
Senator Nelson moves that Senate File number 1958 be passed and moved to the Senate floor. Senator Nelson, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. Senate File 1958 is a bill about superintendents. An extensive, I'm sure you see your extensive bill summary there. If we could have our staff walk through that bill. Ms. Butler.
Ms. Butler, if you would go through the bill, please.
Sure, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair and members. As you can see on line 1.8, the bill changes the shall be to must serve as, and throughout the bill, there are changes of shall to must.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Senator Nelson, any more comments on your bill?
No, Mr. Chair, this is a simple vehicle bill, and I urge passage and sent to the Senate floor.
Any questions, members, for Senator Nelson? Seeing none, Senator Nelson renews her motion to pass Senate File 1958 to be moved to the Senate floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
We're looking for Senator Goggin. Senator Goggin, your bill is up. So yes, Senator Goggin is testifying on another bill in another committee. Let us see if Senator Rood is here. Senate File 156? No. Senator Westrom, 1938. So we have members testifying in different committees. We will start then, Senator Kent, Senate File 1557. Senator Kent, if you'd like to move your bill, be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move Senate File 1557 be laid over for possible inclusion.
Thank you, Senator Kent. Senator Kent, do you have any amendments?
Yes, Madam Chair. I have the A2 amendment, an author's amendment. This is my first stop. And I believe it's not in our packet, so.
It's not in our packets, but it's coming. So members, it is on the way. It is an author's amendment. Senator Kent, would you be able to briefly describe it while it's being passed out to us?
If you wouldn't mind, Madam Chair, I would like, because it's integrated into the bill,
Yes.
so
Senator
it will help
Kent.
the flow and make sense if I do it kind of all as once.
Yes, we will, this is an author's amendment, members. It's the A2 amendment, so Senator Kent can get the bill in the shape that she wishes as it begins its journey. All those in favor of the A2 amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. Now, Senator Kent, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Good afternoon. I'm pleased to present Senate File 1557. I would, if I could, like to provide some context for the bill and then talk about the bill as amended as a whole, as I mentioned. As background, please recall that it was in the 2017 legislation that we reformed our teacher licensure process. As ranking member of the Education Policy Committee, I worked closely with Chair Eric Pratt to create an effective bill, and I was on the conference committee through the final negotiations of that bill. And so with that background in mind, I want to highlight three key purposes of the original legislation as well as of Senate File 1557 that we're considering today. First and foremost, and I know I speak for all of us when I say this, we all want great teachers for all Minnesota students, period, full stop. And we know this is particularly important in our shared efforts to close our opportunity gap in Minnesota. Second, the goal of rebuilding our licensure system has been to increase pathways, to increase access for those wishing to gain a teaching license, but without decreasing quality in our teaching. And third, and this really is focused on the bill before us today, as with many new complex statutes, when we begin implementing them, we often find that we need a few adjustments to make sure that they're working well when we get feedback from different stakeholders. And in this case, as we've gotten started, we have found a few areas for fixes that weren't anticipated initially, and that is some of what we're trying to do with this bill. So I would just, sort of as I alluded earlier, we Minnesotans value high standards for many professions, and the same should be true for our teachers. In 2017, we made some badly needed changes to our licensing system. Stated goals at the time were to make it less complex, to remove barriers for teachers moving from other states to get a Minnesota license, and to improve access for a more diverse group of teachers. But in the process, in some key areas, we did reduce or remove some requirements in education and training to teach in our classrooms. As I mentioned earlier, we don't need to lower our standards for qualifications in order to make the system easier to navigate, to create new pathways. Historically, we had a pretty rigid model that worked in previous years, decades, generations, for teachers to attain their preparation and then demonstrate it to get a license. But in today's world, it is clear we need to allow greater flexibility in ways for teachers to get their preparation, and we also need to offer alternative ways for them to demonstrate that they have achieved adequate preparation and experience. And that's what's behind our overall new system and also for Senate File 1557. And by the way, and I think we'll hear more about this, the good news is it's working. I mean, I remember we've been on this committee together for a number of years, Madam Chair. We tried to implement a portfolio, but under the old system, it was not functional. We now have a portfolio system that is working, and we have some good news about this, and I think it's exciting. As a reminder, the new tiered system was designed to allow teachers to get their education and experience in a way that lets them work their way up a ladder of license levels to become fully qualified, highly experienced professionals. As they progress, they move from situations where license renewals are more frequent to ensure that they're making progress in achieving their qualifications to a stage where they have fully demonstrated their qualifications and then renewals are less frequent. The entire purpose was to create multiple on-ramps so that in this system we could accommodate teachers with licenses from other states, paraprofessionals in our schools who realize they want to commit to more education to get their own license, but they need flexibility to do so, and so many more examples. Senate File 1557, as amended, would make the following changes to the tiers, and I'm going to talk quite a bit about Tier 1 because there are a number of things in here. First, I want to remind everybody that Tier 1 was originally designed to replace our previous community expert category and the variance that too many districts were having to rely on so that they could recruit teachers in certain subject areas, most notably career and technical education. But we also wanted to offer this on-ramp to teachers who have not fully completed their education and experience requirements so that they could be fully licensed. So there are two basic types of teachers, if we're going to generalize, that fall into Tier 1. The original 2017 legislation tried to handle them uniformly, but we have found that that has been challenging with PELSB. Senate File 1557, as amended, addresses these different circumstances. First, the 2017 bill left some of our community expert teachers in limbo. There are about 400 of these folks around the state, and the A2 amendment gives these groups a grace period to meet the new criteria. Second, we direct PELSB to carve out rules specific to CTE, certain arts categories, and some world languages teachers. And finally, we give Tier 1 teachers the opportunity to be part of the teacher bargaining unit. In Tier 2, similar to the changes that I just described in Tier 1, the A2 directs PELSB to carve out rules to the same defined group for Tier 2. We limit Tier 2 eligibility to those who are actively working toward a Tier 3 license, again, with this idea of them building their experience and the pathway, recognizing the importance of rigorous teacher training. And we limit Tier 2 renewals to 2, so a teacher has 6 years to move to Tier 3. In Tier 3, we close the loophole that allows a candidate to attain a Tier 3 license without having completed teacher preparation, which is critical for students to succeed. I've told the story, I think, many times. My husband's really good at math, but I've had a lot of times listening to him trying to coach our son in math over the years, and there's a big difference between knowing it and being able to teach it. Tier 4 would eliminate the requirement that ties a teacher's summative evaluation to their licensure status. Under current language, one flawed evaluation could prevent a teacher from obtaining a Tier 4 license. A couple of notes about things that Senate File 1557 does not do. Senate File 1557 does nothing to prevent qualified teachers from out of state from teaching in Minnesota. This was a major reason we wanted to change the law in the first place, and this will not change that. Senate File 1557 does not eliminate license renewals for shortage areas, for teachers of color, or for CTE teachers. Rather, it eliminates confusing language that could be interpreted to allow unlimited renewals of Tier 1 licenses for every teacher. Today, we are joined by some current educators, an aspiring teacher, and other stakeholders to talk more about why these changes are important for our students and the professionals teaching them every day. Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Thank you, Senator Kent. First, we have those who are going to testify in favor of this bill. Amber Surfling, if you could approach the testifying table, as well as Patricia Cespedes-Schuler. And as the chair's empty, members, if your name is next on the agenda, if you could come up to the testifying table, please. Welcome to the committee. Amber, if you would kindly introduce yourself for the record and begin.
Good morning, or I should say good afternoon, right? Lost track of time today. So good afternoon, Chair Nelson and members of the committee. My name is Amber Surfling, and I'm here today as a mother of a child who qualifies for special education services and is an enrolled member of the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe. I'm also here as a licensed special education teacher. I currently serve students ranging from kindergarten to 4th grade who primarily qualify for special education services under the emotional behavior disability category. I'm here to speak about how the new tiered licensing system is impacting students in rural Minnesota. I've served students and families as a paraprofessional, elementary reading tutor, and as a special education teacher. I earned my license through Nadamatawin, which means helping one another in the Ojibwe language. This post-baccalaureate special education license, with a focus on tribal communities and learning styles through the University of Minnesota Duluth and Augsburg, prepared me to work with students of various abilities. We utilize the Circle of Courage model of positive youth development based on the universal principle that to be emotionally healthy, all youth need it to develop a sense of belonging, mastery, independence, and generosity. This unique model integrated the cultural wisdom of tribal peoples, the practice wisdom of professional pioneers with troubled youth, and findings of modern youth development research. This education provided me with the knowledge necessary to meet the dynamic needs of my students. I was provided training in best practices, due process regulations, child development, behavior modification, academic interventions, accommodations and modifications, the impacts of trauma, and cultural competency. My first year teaching, I was finishing my license, hired on a variance, and could not have done it without my amazing mentor. My second year teaching, I took on a position in a building serving our elementary students with the most significant mental health needs in the district. I also became a mentor as a second year teacher because of our difficulty hiring qualified special education teachers. The fact is, at the time, I could have used a more experienced mentor. While I did my best, I know that the students we served deserved much more. As a mother, I want the educators working with my children to have the training to meet not only their academic needs, but also the highly specialized training required to meet the needs of my child who qualifies for special education services. We also need more educators of color in the classroom so that my son has teachers in his school who look like him. I also want to know what level of licensure those teachers hold, which has been really difficult to obtain. Educators must have knowledge of research-based impacts of social-emotional learning on academic achievement and have the training and tools to meet the needs of the whole child. The implications of unintentionally harming our children are real. We can now have teachers who have never completed teacher preparation coursework in the classroom with our most vulnerable students. Teachers who are not aware that a student's reaction could be rooted in trauma and a result of toxic stress. Teachers who, due to lack of training, react rather than support, heighten the child's stress response, and increase the likelihood of unexpected behaviors. I don't want this for my child, and I don't want this for any of our children. Please make the changes necessary to Minnesota's tiered licensure system to support the needs of all of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, Patricia Suspedy Schuler, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Chair Nelson, members of the committee, hello, my name is Patricia Cespedes Schuler, and I teach first grade at Minnetonka School Districts, and I have been an educator for about 10 years. I'm here to talk to you about tiering licensure. The new licensure tiering program aims to recruit more adults to the profession. That's not a bad idea in itself. However, to recruit unprepared teachers is hardly a long-term solution to our state's teacher shortage. Frankly, I find it to be disrespectful and harmful for our students and future generation of students, especially our students with the highest needs. We wouldn't lower standards to try and recruit more doctors to rural areas. Why are we doing this for the teachers in front of our children every day? Decades of academic research have shown students have better outcomes when they learn from educators who have rigorous preparations in both content and how to teach. How does this make sense? I just had parent-teacher conferences last week, and parents were asking me all kinds of questions to ensure that their children are able to succeed in their academic journey. Look at me. I am a person of color, and I have 2 master's degrees, and I have a background in science. I feel pride in the fact that I can help my families and students be successful because I continue educating myself to grow as a professional. I am also a parent, and I know the effects that great teachers have had on my children. Well-prepared teachers inspire students, have a strong impact on their desire to learn and grow to be the best of themselves. I ask you, what kind of teachers would you like your children to have? Would you accept an untrained teacher to guide your children for a year? How about 2 years in a row? If it's not acceptable for your child, it shouldn't be acceptable for any child. This bill allows parents to know how many Tier 1 and Tier teachers are in each building. That is important and transparent. As a parent, I want to know that. Instead of making it easier to become a teacher, let's make it better to become a teacher. Address the reasons why teachers are leaving the profession. Instead of making it easier to put untrained teachers in our classrooms, why don't we respect and elevate the profession? Let's give teachers the pay they deserve and a voice in the decisions that affect their students and careers. This bill restores Minnetonka's high standards for a teaching license, elevates teachers and keeps them in the classroom. It honors teachers' preparation while recognizing different pathways into teaching. It honors teacher preparation while recognizing different pathways into teaching. All children in Minnesota should have a quality education. We owe that to them. We are the adults, and they trust us. They trust our judgments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Chris, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Peterson. As someone who is currently enrolled in a teacher preparation at the University of Minnesota, I am extremely worried about what will happen to Minnesota's education system if we do not have high standards for teacher licensure. In my teacher preparation courses, I have learned pedagogical techniques and concepts that I could not have gotten with on-the-job training. I have absolutely no idea how I could be an effective teacher for my students without each and every one of these tools, especially for my students with special needs or those who come from a different culture than my own. Minnesota needs to close the loophole that allows a candidate to attain a Tier 3 license without having completed a teacher preparation program. Research has shown students have better outcomes when they learn from educators who have robust preparation in both content and how to teach. Opponents have argued that we should keep Minnesota's relaxed requirements because of our teacher shortage. We are not in this position because we haven't prepared enough teachers. It's because those teachers are leaving the profession at record rates. 1 out of every 3 teachers leaves the profession in the first 5 years. Why would individuals who have never been trained to be a teacher fare any better? Lowering licensure standards hasn't played out well for other states. 30,000 teachers in Oklahoma have left the profession in the past 6 years, according to the State Department of Ed's Educator Supply and Demand report released last month. The report cited low pay, steep budget cuts, and little respect as the top reasons for leaving. What made Oklahoma's teacher shortage even worse? Lowering licensure standards for hiring teachers and increasing the workload of the educators who remained in the classroom. According to the report I mentioned above, quote, this approach has created a vicious cycle that has widened teacher shortages and had detrimental effects on student achievement, unquote. Minnesota cannot afford to go down the same road. Instead of lowering our standards to attract teachers, let's fund programs let's fund what works to attract people to teaching and keep them in the profession, especially for our educators of color. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Ms. Burnham, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Nelson and members of the committee. My name is Bernadette Burnham, and I'm a teacher with Duluth Public Schools. I'm currently on leave to serve as the president of the Duluth Federation of Teachers. I know all too well we need more educators of color in our schools. I've been the only person of color in my buildings many times during my 19 years of teaching. But lowering the standards is not the way to recruit people into this profession. My route into teaching was different than most. 25 years ago, I was working in my children's school as a parent volunteer, 10 hours a week, and heavily involved in the Parent-Teacher Association. The assistant principal turned to me one day and said, why don't you just go get your degree? You're here all the time, and you're good with kids. So After some conversation with family, I enrolled at the University of Minnesota Duluth and was able to get my teaching degree with the help of a Teacher of Color grant. I learned a lot from my experience as a parent volunteer, watching master teachers in the classroom. But the time I spent in my preparation program learning about pedagogy, the art and science of teaching, was extremely important to my success as a teacher. I also went on to get my master's degree of education. Communities of color celebrate when their family and friends complete advanced degrees and trainings. It's a point of pride because for so long, people of color were kept out of those education systems. We need to honor teachers of color by keeping standards high and let them know we support them. And even more important, it's not good to put teachers with a lack of preparation in front of our students, especially those with the highest needs. It's also troubling that under the current law, Tier 1 teachers don't have the freedom to join their local bargaining unit. My union is important to me because I can advocate for my students and colleagues without fear of retaliation from administration. As the president of the Duluth Federation Teachers, I hear all the time from our non-tenured teachers they are fearful to advocate. We stand by their side so they are not alone. Minnesota does not have a teacher shortage. We have a teaching exodus. 1 of 3 teachers leave the profession within 5 years, and teachers of color leave at a rate of 24% higher than white teachers. Here's what you can do to keep teachers, especially teachers of color, from leaving the classroom. Respect our profession. Eliminate the financial hurdles to get a teaching degree. Fully fund our schools so we can have more support staff and greater access to mental health resources in our schools. Provide mentoring and on-the-job training. SF 1557 makes much-needed changes to the tiered teacher licensure system by restoring Minnesota's high standards for a license, elevating teachers to keep them in the classroom, and honoring teacher preparation while recognizing different pathways into teaching. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Burnham. Next up, Laura Mogelson, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Laura Mogelson, and I am from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, where I am the director of the Multiple Pathways to Teaching office. I am here today representing MACD and our 31 colleges and university members in support of Senate File 1557. Many have suggested that we should allow some time for the new structure to work. We respectfully disagree. There is a large body of research demonstrating the positive impact on student learning of being taught by a fully prepared teacher. MACD believes that licensure pathways should not sacrifice high standards in the process of providing more flexibility. We believe that the 8 years of teaching possible under Tier 1 and Tier 2 licenses under this bill should be sufficient for individuals who want to attain a Tier 3 license through the completion of an approved preparation program, be it on campus or online, and from the growing array of approved licensure programs, including alternative programs. A question came up in the House as to whether or not the proposed changes would affect current Grow Your Own programs, and it will not. This legislation removes one Tier 2 to Tier 3 licensure pathway. In this situation, a teacher can earn a Tier 3 license after 3 years of teaching with a Tier 2 license, combined with not being on an improvement plan. This creates a pathway for teachers without pedagogical preparation or content coursework to earn a Tier 3 license based only on the recommendation of an individual employer's evaluation plus the 3 years of teaching. These evaluations may or may not be aligned with Minnesota statutes and rules that other Tier 3 teachers must meet, including the Minnesota Standards of Effective Practice, sometimes called the SEPs. These are 125 standards that all preparation providers, traditional and alternative, must show evidence of a teacher meeting before recommendation for licensure. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, now we are listening to those who have concerns about the bill. We'll start with Denise Dietrich or her replacement with the Minnesota School Board Associations. Please introduce yourself and welcome to the committee.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. My name is Kim Lewis, and I'm with Minnesota School Boards Association. Today, I'm also representing Minnesota Association of School Administrators, Association of Metropolitan School Districts. We respectfully share our opposition to Senate File 1557, which proposes significant changes to the recently enacted tiered licensure system. Our opposition is grounded in one unified message. Please allow the tiered licensure system sufficient time to work before deconstructing it. I will provide the context for this historical change in the teacher licensure system. The long journey began with the 2016 Office of Legislative Auditor report on the teacher licensure system in Minnesota. It was clear from the report the Minnesota teacher licensure system was broken and confusing. The OLA report only confirmed the frustration our school districts from St. Paul to Thief River Falls were experiencing due to growing teacher shortages and stagnant educator diversity. Stories were mounting that navigating the old process served as a barrier to getting qualified and motivated individuals into careers in education. The old system needed reform. The bipartisan teacher licensure study group was formed, and we as stakeholders shared thoughts, ideas, testimony to illustrate the daily hiring challenges facing our schools. Recommendations were made for the 2017 legislative session. Dozens of meetings and thousands of hours throughout the session spurred discussions and recommendations that were debated and improved through the process. Legislators heard input from teachers, school leaders, school board members, the Department of Education, and Governor Dayton himself. The new tiered licensure system provides the much-needed flexibility and trust school leaders were asking for, particularly in shortage areas. It allows school districts to place the best teacher in front of our students as we all strive to meet the goals of the world's best workforce and ESSA. We feel strongly this historical reform the governor signed into law and the thorough bipartisan process that created the framework should be allowed to work before adjusting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dr. Nolan, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you. Fred Nolan, Executive Director of the Minnesota Rural Education Association. In Greater Minnesota is facing a teacher shortage. In some disciplines, it's a crisis. 6 rural regions show the greatest teacher shortage in Minnesota, according to the 2019 Biennial Minnesota Teacher and Supply Report. We'd prefer no action, but we really appreciate an author who's willing to work with us on some of our issues. And so I can say that the author has fixed, to a great degree, our #1 concern about how we attract mid-career and CTE teachers to education through tiers 1 and 2. There's one issue that I want to bring up with you to just make sure it'll work, if you're welcome. Okay. Secondly, I would ask the author.
What is that issue? It's
the issue
important
has
for us
to
to know.
Okay, line 1.23. To complete a bachelor's degree, has to do with community experts who were hired by school districts under the old rules prior to January 1, 2017. It's in the Amendment 1A, lines 1.22 and 1.23. So these are people working full-time. There are about a half a dozen of these teachers that I know of in northern Minnesota, north of Grand Rapids and up in that area. And they're working full-time with community expert status. My concern is I don't know where they are toward a bachelor's degree and working full-time if in with 2 years they can complete a bachelor's degree. But between 3 and 4, which is 2.21, 2.20, and 2.21, I think we can make this work. We just have to look into it in more detail, see where they are in their programs, quite frankly. Does that help?
Yes, thank you, Dr.
Okay.
Nolan. You just want a grandfather clause in for
Well, we
those who
to
have
look-
started.
Right, we have to look, Senator Kent has got a great start here. We just have to look at that deadline of 2021.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Nolan.
There are a couple more things, Madam Chair.
Dr.
that
Nolan,
I wasn't
continue.
expecting to take a little that time on that. We would ask that the master's degree for Tier 2 still be allowed. This we see as a strategy to address the HLC credentialing requirement for concurrent enrollment teachers. And we see this as an issue that's going to come up in 21-22. And so we see this as a way districts can continue to offer post-secondary education. Thirdly, we wonder why the evaluation was stricken both in moving from Tier 2 to 3 and from 3 to 4. We think that devalues the professional evaluation system that everybody is using. And finally, we're not prepared to say that a Tier 1 or Tier 2 teacher is equivalent to a teacher placed on discipline. And that's what sections 7.25 begin to do. So we'd ask the author to consider that again. We appreciate working with you, Senator, and look forward to continuing.
Thank you for those constructive comments.
Madam Chair?
Senator Kent.
Very briefly, just to address Dr. Nolan's one point, which I think is really important in the big picture. Without, and I'm very flexible on that date for grandfathering, and we need to have that conversation, but without grandfathering that in to some degree, we're going to create a real problem for a number of people who are already in our schools. That's
Thank
why
you.
some adjustments need to be discussed. Thank you.
Senator Cross, excuse me, Mr. Crossan, welcome to the
Almost
committee.
promoted me there.
No, no
Thank you,
issue there.
thank you, Madam Chair. Josh Crossan here with Ed Allies. So I'm just testifying with concerns to SF 1557. I just handed out a cheat sheet of what the bill would do. If you look on the back, it's actually just a track change of what this legislation would do. But in short, it would restrict, it would cap, and it would disallow the hiring of our Tier 1 and Tier 2 educators. You'll also soon hear from 2 such teachers who will have to leave the classroom or will be effectively pushed out if this bill passes. And as you hear testimony today, I leave just one message that if it can stick with you, that'd be great. But there is no conclusive evidence that a Tier 3 or Tier 4 teacher is more or less effective than a Tier 1 or Tier 2 teacher. In fact, a Princeton University study found that, quote, evidence suggests that certification requirements can diminish the pool of applicants, but there is no evidence on how they affect student outcomes. Yet we do have evidence that career and technical education teachers, our college in the schools educators, and our educators of color are closing academic achievement gaps, improving high school graduation rates, and increasing college attendance for our most underserved students. And these are the very teachers whom SF 1557 would disproportionately push out of the classroom by creating unnecessary certification requirements for our Tier 1 and Tier 2 teachers. 23% of all teachers of color and 47% of all career and technical education teachers are currently teaching in Minnesota with a Tier 1 and Tier 2 license. I know it's not the author's intent to target or to push these teachers out by eliminating pathways to permanent licensure, but the data shows that this legislation would do just that. Why this matters most for students, and I'll just leave here, is that a black student with 30%, or sorry, a black student is about 30% more likely to graduate high school if they have one black teacher. A Native American student is 75% more likely to graduate high school if they complete two career and technical education courses. To support Minnesota's most underserved students, we must keep our effective teachers, our teachers of color, and our career and technical education teachers in the classroom and not push them out. So I thank you for this opportunity, and I'll be open for any questions.
Mr. Crossan, what were those statistics again as far as our career tech and teachers of color that would be no longer allowed to teach under this bill?
Right, so the teachers of color is about 23% of our teachers of color are teaching under a Tier 1 and Tier 2 license. And about 47% of our career and technical education teachers are teaching under a Tier 1 and Tier 2 license. And as part of that, as you can see, the creating new requirements for Tier 2 teachers, closing pathways for Tier 2 teachers. And then again, Dr. Nolan referenced this earlier, but I think it starts in lines 10.12, where it disallows schools from placing students with a Tier 1 or Tier 2 teacher for 2 consecutive years or more. So we're not only limiting their license, but we're disallowing schools from being able to hire these educators.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we have Dr. Najah Potters. Please introduce yourself for the tape.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Jayan Potters, and I am a teacher with a Tier 2 license. I moved to the Twin Cities to pursue a doctoral degree at the University of Minnesota, and that's where I first was in front of a classroom and developed a love of teaching. Once I got my PhD, I decided to pursue a teaching career in secondary schools because I wanted the primary focus of my professional life to be teaching rather than research. I used the training that I received as a graduate instructor as a foundation for building my skills as a classroom teacher. Since 2011, I've been teaching social studies to middle and high school students in Minneapolis. At that time, Teach for America offered one of the only alternative paths to earning a teaching license. Unfortunately for me, TFA was not authorized to license in secondary social studies, the area in which my background made me especially qualified. As a result, I took classes in a traditional teacher training program at Hamline University and received a K-6 teaching license, K-6. Despite this official certification, all of my teaching has been in secondary social studies classes, a field in which I am not licensed. Through a combination of mentoring, professional development, and coaching, I have been a very successful teacher. My students, the majority of whom have been students of color, English language learners, and eligible for free and reduced lunch, have performed exceptionally well. Both they and their families have responded positively to me, and I have received consistently excellent performance observations. These experiences, both receiving a traditional teaching license and teaching outside of my licensed area, first on a variance and then as a Tier 2 teacher, leave me uniquely positioned to comment on the ways that the licensure system must provide multiple paths into the classroom. I can say with absolute certainty that I am a better high school teacher than I would ever be in a self-contained K-6 classroom. I say this not only as an educator with 7 years of experience, but also as someone with years of experience evaluating other teachers. The tiered system that was implemented last year finally provided me with a path toward earning licensure in the field in which I actually teach. I have 3 post-secondary degrees in social studies disciplines. I am a person of color, and I am committed to public education. I've taught at the university level, and I've spent years adapting this experience to provide rigorous college preparatory instruction to middle and high school students. The licensing changes that are being proposed would push me out of public schools. I would be deemed an ineffective teacher, and I would instead teach at elite private college prep schools where they actually value my background and experience. I think all of our students deserve the kind of teaching that I and educators like me can bring to the classroom. This proposal would turn away qualified, sought-after teachers. And it's my fear that once these people leave the profession, they may be gone from teaching for good. As you consider these changes, please consider the impact that they will have on teachers like me and the students in our classrooms. If we're truly committed to closing the achievement gap and diversifying the pool of classroom teachers is an important part of that solution. One way to think about diversity is to create a space for a diversity of experiences and to create diverse paths for obtaining a license. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Taisha Williams-Vaughn, Tier 1 teacher. Welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the tape, please.
Good afternoon. I am Taisha Williams-Vaughn. I am an English teacher at Venture Academy in Minneapolis. Today, I am speaking on behalf of Mr. Brooks and Mr. Rodriguez, the only 2 other teachers of color at my school, who show our Black and Hispanic students each day what it is to be a professional person of color. Without a Tier 1 license, neither of them would exist at our school. I'm speaking today for my 6-year-old son, who did not have one single teacher of color in his St. Paul Public School elementary classroom. I am also speaking for myself, a Tier 1 teacher who was a fully licensed teacher of 8 years in another state before I came here, and I may be pushed out and not allowed to teach because I don't meet Minnesota standards. I want to urge you not to revert back to the old state licensure system because it excludes quality people that could do hard work that will benefit our children. When I engage in dialogue with people across the state, I often hear about the high standards and graduation rates that this state prides itself on. However, there is nothing to be proud about being in the bottom 5 when it comes to educating children of color. As a teacher from another state, it was very difficult to gain a Minnesota license. Did you know that 85% of the Black teachers in this country went to historically Black colleges and universities? I am one of them. There are no historically Black colleges or universities in this state. If all of the teachers that are Black, or most of them, came from a different place and we are not able to teach here, then we probably will not have them. And we are missing out, and our children are missing out on the education that they deserve. We are not lowering our standards. We are just giving more individuals opportunity to help our children grow and learn. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Ryan Stromberg and Carrie Bakken. Ryan, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Madam Chair, members of the Senate, my name is Ryan Stromberg. I'm the Director of HR and Organizational Development for the Spring Lake Park School District. I also serve as the President for MASPA, which is the Minnesota School Association for Personnel Administrators. And by the way, I'm going to shorten my comments because the last two comments and before that were beautifully aligned with where we're at. And it really comes down to this for us, along with the statistics that were already provided, is right now, if I use Anoka Hennepin Schools, which is the largest school in Minnesota, 1.5% of their teachers are on Tier 1 or Tier 2. So if I localize that for Spring Lake Park, we have 400 teachers. So if I round up to do HR math, if I round to 2%, that's 8 of our teachers. And I'm just going to give you a few more statistics along with what we're doing for our kids in Spring Lake Park schools and also what we're doing for our teachers. So what we're trying to get is we don't want to see artificial caps on Tier 1, Tier 2 and those opportunities, similar to what you just heard, for all the reasons that you just heard. But it's really this. So, for example, we have a nursing program, a nursing assistant program in our school district. As you all know, there's actually a 0% or a negative unemployment rate with nurses in the state of Minnesota. We currently have an RN who's doing the education program for our nurses. There actually is not an educational program, licensing program, for her to go back to be a licensed teacher, to be Tier 3 or Tier 4. And she's a phenomenal educator. She's been with us over 7, 8, 9 years now. Second piece, we just hired this last year an executive out of Medtronic, a 22-year veteran employee who has an MBA and I don't know how many other, what other college degrees she holds. She's currently partnering with a math educator in what we can deliver in a pathway program that we've never been able to deliver before. And I highlight that just to say is what we talk about in the language that concerns us is what we're worried about, what does traditional preparation look like? As we talk about competency-based learning, as we talk about personalized learning, and we've heard a lot of testimony for other bills, is how do we ensure that we're including each child, not just a majority of children, but each child in what we do. So as we talk about these different examples, for us it's how do we not create artificial caps, but how do we create access? And by the way, the only percentage that I know of right now that's along with what we've done over the last 4 or 5 years to realign our tiered system is 1.5%. So if that's Anoka Hennepin's number, 1.5% in Tier 1 and Tier 2, let's look at that data this following year, the next year. And then I think we can evaluate if our tiered system is working or not. I think we have a ton of examples in our country with Massachusetts, who's been one of our front runners in education, that has a very similar system. And it's not about diluting education, it's about creating access so we don't eliminate great people in our system. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Stromberg. Ms. Bakken, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
So my name is Carrie Bakken, and I am a teacher and program coordinator at Avalon School. Thank you, Madam Chair, for having me. I wanted to just highlight the impact of some of the proposed changes in Senate File 1577 and the Tier 1 licensure in particular. Avalon has worked very hard to always hire fully licensed teachers for over 18 years. We very much care about teacher professionalism. We are a teacher-run school, and I think many of you have actually visited Avalon and seen that teachers can be in charge of a school and run it well. We care very much about our highly qualified teaching force. We do have a teacher on a Tier 1 license right now, and it is because we have developed a really robust SHOP program. We serve about 40% of our students have disabilities, and over 50% of our students have a diagnosed disability. And we have found that those hands-on experiences have provided a pathway to incredible senior projects, incredible excitement over different paths in education over the last 4 to 5 years. So I don't want to say much more about that, but our current teacher has over 20 years of career and technical experience professionally. He's been in the contract world.
and he's built very strong relationships with all of our students. He also, it is only a 10-hour-a-week position. We have posted for that position for every year now for the last 3 years, and we never have anybody else who is able to fill that position and apply for that position. He supplements his time by also working with our students with disabilities as a one-on-one paraprofessional, and we have yet to find somebody fully licensed to take that place. And I know that Avalon would not be alone in a very small setting. We can't hire full-time for some of these specialized things, and so it's very difficult for us to hire fully licensed teachers in all areas. But I would love for you to consider how beneficial these hands-on learning experiences and recruiting people from the professional world to work with our students is. It is unlikely that he would go on to a teacher preparation program in his mid-50s. So I'm just asking for support to have some sort of leniency on this. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Bakken. I believe we have time for a few comments. Members, were there questions? Senator Clausen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just some comments. Again, thank you, Senator Kent, for bringing this forward. It's a good discussion that we can have. And one of the things I'd like to comment on that Tier 1, I appreciate you bringing that forward, because Tier 1 was created as a replacement for kind of emergency situations. The week before school was going to start, all of a sudden a teacher is leaving because of a spouse transfer of some sort. The community expert to fill that gap. This doesn't mean you can't renew that person. We're saying that it's a one-year contract. We repost the position. If you cannot find a person, you can rehire that person. So I think that's an important point to be making. I appreciate you bringing that forward. The second point I'd like to make is when the Pellsby teacher licensure bill was passed 2 years ago, there was considerable discussion regarding Tier 3 and the ability of an applicant to receive a license without participating or being enrolled in a teacher preparation program. And I think this is an important point that's been talked about here a few times here today. And I think that's something that needs to be stressed, that it's important that we have professionals in the classroom. And I think also Pellsby, from what I've seen, is doing a real good job of taking a look at traditional, non-traditional programs, evaluating those and identifying those that are acceptable for a Tier 3 license. So I wanted to make those points. And then also, just Dr. Patters, just a comment you made. I think you could get an out-of-field permission license. So I just wanted to make that point to people. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Clausen. Senator Dames.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Kent, I do appreciate your bringing this bill forward. You and I will probably disagree a little bit on some of this stuff. I come from rural Minnesota, and I know how important Tier 1 is. And we've had that conversation last year in the Education Policy Committee quite frequently. And I defended Tier 1 very heavily, and I will continue to defend it very heavily today. Because we rely in rural Minnesota, this might be the only option we have to have a student have the opportunity to have that type of course. So I'm a little disappointed to see that in your comment there's a few fixes and minor adjustments. I would say it's pretty much an overhaul of Tier 1. I think that that's unfortunate. I don't think that's where we should be going. So I am quite concerned about that. The other thing is that it appears to me that we're really trying to diminish Tier 1. So I'm a little bit concerned or a little confused why, if the way we're going to try to overhaul Tier 1, why are we requiring that Tier 1 members have to be a member of the collective bargaining unit?
Senator Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, we're not requiring them. We're creating that opportunity. There's no requirement to specifically answer that question. And I would say, Senator Dames, I agree with you completely. I think the problem was that because we sort of oversimplified the way we structured Tier 1 and we tried to put too many things in one basket, we didn't give it the full opportunity. And so by creating the opportunity for career and technical, because I agree with you, we need to make sure that career and technical educators have this opportunity to be in our classrooms. We also want them to have the opportunity to get additional training. We also, and I want to be real clear about this, this bill does not change the ability for teachers to get good cause renewals for, and that covers a whole range, that covers if they're going through their trainings and there's a financial hardship, and different areas of, so career and technical, and different areas where we have specific needs. But the intent here is to support Tier 1, not to undermine it.
Follow-up.
Senator Dames.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Kent, thank you for that information. You and I will disagree a little bit on where Tier 1 is going. I don't agree that we're not weakening Tier 1. I think that we are. And the other thing is that this has only been into effect for about a half a school year. And here we are trying to change it already. Why don't we give this thing a little time to play out and see how it's really going to work? How do we know that what we're doing in Tier 1 is correct? We don't. And so why don't we give this thing an opportunity to play out and see where we are in another year and a half or so after it's had 2 school years, and see what the effects really are. But again, thank you for bringing the bill, but that's my position on it.
Madam Chair?
Senator Kent.
If I may, I'd like to ask if Mr. Liuzzi would come up and talk about what some of the circumstances have been in this first half of a year with.
Senator Kent, we're going to have to save that till a later time. We want to make sure that our members have an opportunity to ask their questions. This is going to be laid over for possible inclusion. Certainly, you're welcome to bring new information to me and send it to the members as well, but we already are behind schedule. And I want to make sure that all members do have an opportunity for comment. So we will hold off on that additional testimony at this point.
Madam Chair, if I can address, and I think it is important because the way this was structured, somebody had to testify for or against this bill, and Mr. Liuzzi's not in a position to do that. He does have, I think, a lot to offer this conversation, so I think it's important.
I said I'd be glad to hear that later.
And so, but I did, just to respond to what Senator Dame said, and in the midst of that now I've forgotten it. But, you know, this, the experience that Pellsby is already seeing, as Senator Clausen alluded to, is that this is working. This new system that we have implemented is working. Oh, that's, I remember my point. We have about 400 teachers right now who were in the former community expert mode and now are in limbo because we didn't think to address that limbo that they would automatically be put in when we changed the ground rules. And so that is one of the very important reasons that we need to make some adjustments to this to make sure that we are identifying these situations so that we don't have a big disruption for 400 teachers around our state. And many of them are in career and technical education.
Any further comments? Senator Uyghur.
Yes, Madam Chair, briefly, I know we're looking at overtime, but first, Senator Kent, thank you for bringing this forward. I'm sure sometime in May there'll be a resolution, some progress on this in a conference committee as the other body will be bringing recommendations for sure. I think there's at least some elements that we can reach consensus on here. The one area that I want to ask you to respond to, we all agree about the need for high-quality teachers. We all know there's a shortage. We want more pathways. There's other bills, too, that would, I think Senator Torres Ray had a bill to provide additional funds for pathways for teachers of color. But there was testimony earlier that your bill would create a roadblock for teachers of color and, the career tech area as well. A roadblock. I know that's not your intent. It's not my intent as a co-author. And could you please address that for the record?
Senator Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Uyghur. I appreciate the opportunity to address that. You're exactly right. I have worked hard and spent a lot of time and attention over the years looking at this issue of how do we increase teacher diversity within our workforce. One thing I will say is, and we've heard some statistics to this today from both sides, a lot of the issue is we are actually recruiting a number of teachers of color, but then they don't stay. And that's not an issue of licensure, that's an issue of retention. But to the specific point about what does this bill do, it does nothing to eliminate Tier 1 and Tier 2 teachers, particularly teachers of color, as long as there is the good cause exception for those renewals as they continue their path to reach that level, to reach the standards as defined in the tiers that already exist. And excuse me, long week, long day. And so it is important that people know that that is absolutely not the intent, and I would really submit that that is not the way this should be interpreted. I believe strongly that and that's the way it's working, and that's why I wish we could have Mr. Liuzzi address this, because he could talk about what is actually happening in terms of the renewals of licenses and how this process is working. But that is the intent, and we will provide more information as follow-up.
Thank you. Senator Chamberlain.
Yeah, thank you. To that point, thank you. Senator Kent, to that point, so this is your wheelhouse, but so we had a doctor testify, and then we had Taisha Williams, very educated, very well qualified, and they're in Tier 1. So according to the way this is structured, it appears that they would be eliminated from teaching because of the bill proposal. Is that not the case?
Senator Kent.
Madam Chair and Senator Chamberlain, without knowing the specifics of their cases, I can't exactly address that. But again, if we could have Mr. Liuzzi up here to talk
Senator
about.
Kent, this is the fourth time you've mentioned that.
Well,
we cannot continue to have testifiers belong the time that was allowed. However, I will be glad to share all of that information with the committee. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, but the questions are continuing to be asked that if we did not have this set up as only pro or opposed.
Senator Kent,
that
can
we
you
could
answer
deal
the
with this.
question?
I've answered the question as best I can because I
Okay.
don't know the specifics of those
Thank
cases.
you. I understand your answer. Thank you, Senator Kent. Further comments? Senator Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quick, thank you, Senator Kent. You know that I haven't been the biggest fan of the tiered licensure system over the last year or two, and I think you've made some really great corrections. The number one, and I agree with Senator Dames when he says maybe we do need some more time, but there's one thing we do not need more time because it was a huge mistake from day one and Tier 1 teachers not being part of collective bargaining. That was a glaring mistake. It was a slap in those Tier 1 teachers' faces that they could not be part of collective bargaining. So I thank you for making that correction. And I think it's interesting in the Ed Allies literature that this could happen. Nearly 1/4 of our current educators of color under this proposal may have to leave the classroom, which is ironically less than a third of the teachers that are leaving anyways because of morale in our schools or whatever the reasons that they are leaving. So thank you, Senator.
Thank you for that comment, Senator Swedzinski. You know, Senator Kent, there's a couple things that I think were not said that are important to be on the record, and a lot of our discussion today is about Tier 1, and there is something that everyone in this room agrees upon, and that is the teacher. The teacher is the #1 in-school variable that correlates with student achievement. So it is right and proper that we spend a lot of time studying and looking at how can we make sure that all of our kids are getting teachers, those great teachers that are going to help them succeed and do well. But my concern is about the Tier 1 license. And the kind of, in a sense, almost abolishing that Tier 1 license, although there is one renewal. But here's the problem with that, Senator Kent. So Tier 1 licenses are only granted if requested by the school and if they are unable to hire a teacher with a Tier 2, 3, or 4. So according to your legislation here, a school that has a Tier 1 teacher for 1 year, they've requested that teacher and they can't find a teacher that has a Tier 2, 3, or 4. Now it comes time for the next contract. And guess what? That teacher is not eligible and there's no other teacher. And so your bill would instead say, instead of having a Tier 1 teacher who taught this in this school or this course, last year, now we have to have another Tier 1 teacher who hasn't had that experience. So I know you're not meaning to devalue the experience, but I think that is exactly what would happen here. And the fact that I just don't want that to be missed, that the Tier 1 is for those requests by a school district and when a Tier 2, 3, or 4 is not available. I think that is a significant part of this discussion. And then I appreciated your comments on mentoring, and we know how important that is, and yet there's a part in your bill that prevents Tier 3 and Tier 4 teachers from being required to mentor other teachers. So something for you to consider then. And then there's one thing that is not allowed that I'm concerned about, and that is the summative review for Tier 4 teachers. And most importantly, I think it must be a clear oversight that teachers who've been placed on an improvement plan can still receive a Tier 4 license, and they're on that improvement plan. And so I just think there's some clunkers in here that I'm hoping that you'll continue to address. And I just want to say the largest concern, though, is this does work at odds. As I was the author of the Teacher of Color Act in 2017 that we passed into law that started encouraging grow your own and teacher preparation courses as part of PSEO and concurrent enrollment and all of these good things. And I'm really quite concerned that what you are planning or what you've suggested here for Tier 1, it truly would damage and push out teachers of color that we're working so hard to increase, and of course our career tech educators as well. And that's an area that we know is of great shortage and of great need. So I appreciate the thoughtful discussion that we've had here today, members, and all of your input. And we will lay Senate File 1557 over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Thank you, Senator Kent. And now, members, we have Senate File, we'll go back. We missed you, Senator Goggin, when you were testifying in another room. Senate File 1503, Senator Goggin. Senator Anderson, could you move Senator Goggin's bill be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill, please? Thank you. Senator Anderson moves Senate File 1503 be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Senator Goggin, to your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee members, for giving me the opportunity to present Senate File 1503 to you. What this bill does is it creates a statewide goal for all schools to benchmark their energy usage. It's designed to keep Minnesota's valuable education dollars in the classroom rather than spent on energy that is basically wasted. Minnesota has an existing tool known as the B3 Online Energy Portfolio that allows schools to track their progress, compare with their peers, and use building energy data to improve performance and save money. This software is already paid for, and currently 204 school districts around the state already use it for free. Among the schools benchmarking already, the B3 software has identified over $10 million in cost savings around the state. The benefits from this bill come in two forms. We know school administrators and facility managers are busy keeping schools running. Looking at energy usage helps identify when equipment is not working properly. Much of the energy savings comes from tweaking mechanical equipment that isn't working properly at no cost. Additionally, this will help schools target which energy-saving capital investments would most reduce their utility bills. For example, if the software could answer or identify if investing in upgraded lighting or heating systems would have a greater impact on lowering the school's utility bills. At the end of the day, this bill is good for our schools, it's good for our students, good for our taxpayers, and I ask for your support in this bill.
Thank you, Senator Goggin. Just to put members at ease, note the A1 amendment. I would like to offer that. Senator Goggin, I hope you'll accept it as a friendly amendment. We know that this committee is not interested in putting unfunded mandates on our schools. And so the A1 amendment specifically states that while the reporting is required, there is no penalty for failure to comply with this section.
Madam
So,
Chair, I accept
Senator
that as a
Goggin.
friendly amendment, and I encourage everybody to accept that amendment.
Thank you, Senator Goggin. All in favor of the A1 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The A1 is adopted. Senator Goggin, your bill is amended, and now I believe you have some testifiers.
Yes, ma'am, we do. I'll turn it over to, oh, we're going to flip a coin, I guess.
Sherry Schneider's first on the agenda, so we'll go with Sherry. Welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. My name is Sherry Schneider. I'm with Wilden, formerly known as the White Group, and we manage and facilitate the B3 benchmarking program for the state of Minnesota. And I have just a quick demonstration to show the committee how easy it is to use and what the schools would need to do to be able to utilize this free system that the state is already funding. So I have permission from ISD 197 to utilize their district. It is a secure environment, so normally the public would not see this data. But schools just simply need to add their buildings. So I'll pull up an example here of Moreland Elementary. They've got their name, their address. They'll pick a primary building type of elementary, middle, high school, enter in gross square footage, and we'll default the space allocations. If they'd like to, they can get more detailed information about entering in and modifying these space allocations, but it is not necessary. And that's as simple as getting in their buildings. Once they have their buildings entered, they can add in their energy data. We also have the ability to track water in this same program. Looking at an electric bill, they'll enter in some information about their electric accounts. Adding additional readings is as simple as clicking add a reading. They'll get a new row. They'll read this right from the utility bill. Oftentimes account payable folks or users that are already handling the bills will enter this data for the district. They'll just pull that data in. They would save and close. Once they have at least a year's worth of information, they'll be able to gather the metrics to see how the building is doing. The benchmark here shows how the building is doing to a code-based building based off of that building information that was entered. The peer comparison is looking at how that building is being compared to other peers within the B3 database. We integrate fully with Energy Star, so if the building is applicable to get an Energy Star score, that's automatically pulled in. The schools can then utilize this data to apply for certification without further data entry into Portfolio Manager. The final metric here is the baseline, so this is seeing how the building is doing over time. If they have implemented some energy efficiencies, they'll be able to track that here and ensure that the expected savings that they were anticipating is being realized for those buildings. We also have some high-level metrics here at the district level so they can see where they may want to focus their savings or their capital expenditures on efficiencies. ISD 197 has been benchmarking their districts for many years, so you can see that they've implemented a lot of those savings and they're seeing that they don't have a lot of potential anymore. Again, they've been utilizing benchmarking programs since 2003, so they've been doing it for quite a long time. We also have the ability to stack rank the buildings within the district, so they can also work on focusing on where they want to spend those dollars. So that's just a quick high-level summary for you guys to get a feel for what the B3 benchmarking program is.
Thank you. Welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Ben Rabe, and I'm a Senior Policy Associate at Fresh Energy. Thanks to Chair Nelson and committee members for hearing this bill today. Also, thanks to Senator Goggin for authoring this bill. As we touched on, the goal for Senate File 1503 is simply to promote a best practice among schools to help them save money. It doesn't cost anything for Minnesota schools to use. If an average school district outside of Minnesota wanted to use the B3 software to track their energy use, it costs approximately $5,000 a year to use the program. This does not interrupt local control because it doesn't require schools to do anything with this data, and there's no penalty for non-compliance. As Senator Goggin mentioned, benchmarking has two major benefits. The first is to flag hidden problems, and the second is to prioritize energy actions. Couple examples. Elk River identified a a number of no-cost issues after using the software that saves the district $500,000 a year. Rochester is currently up to date in B3 and has identified a potential savings of $172,000 a year. North St. Paul Maplewood School District has reduced their energy consumption by 6% and anticipate a savings of $250,000 a year as a result of using the software. We've been working with education groups for this for years, and to our understanding, they're all neutral on this bill.
Thank you. Members, any comments? Senator Torres-Ray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, thank you for this bill. I think this is very exciting. Actually, in our district, we're really trying very hard to figure out what to do with our old buildings and just save money. And I was wondering if we could connect, because part of, I think, what in our district we're trying to figure out is how schools can take advantage of certain incentives that exist out there. They are thinking about solar energy. Senator Dibble has a bill that is very interesting. And I was hoping that perhaps part of the report could be to encourage districts to share with one another about, different strategies that they have pursued that have actually worked, because some of the buildings are very old, some are newer buildings, and some are building just these very high-tech buildings like our building. So they're kind of different, and I hope that this report allows the school districts to share that information and learn from one another. So I'd like to connect with you in terms of what we need to do to kind of provide those incentives to report, not just to show kind of the progress in terms of energy, but also best practices.
Thank you. Any comments, Senator Goggin?
Well, that's the whole intent behind this, is to get the collaboration going amongst our school districts and to help each other out and have those conversations about what is working and what different school districts are experiencing, what the different types of buildings they have, the age of the buildings, the type of construction of the buildings. And that's why I brought this bill forward, was just to help our school districts take advantage of all the available tools that are out there to them, free of use, free of charge. And just takes a little bit of time to get set up at the beginning, but once it's set up, you can really build data over time and get some good metrics going forward. As an engineer myself, we're always looking for being able to identify if equipment is starting to fail. And this is a good tool to help do that. And so it will help school districts budget their funds for capital improvements and investments going forward. And as we heard in testimony, there's a number of school districts that are saving a considerable amount of money, and that really helps out for the taxpayers, and it helps out the schools, and they can keep that money in the schools and ultimately help out the students that we're there for. So.
Thank you, Senator Goggin. This is an exciting technological innovation here that I think can help save costs, and I'm looking at those $172,000 of energy savings from the Rochester Public Schools, and I think, that could buy a couple reading teachers or whatever the school district needs. But so I just want to be clear, though. We are clear that there's no mandate. There's no teeth in the mandate. There's no penalty. We added that on in the amendment. I also just want to be clear on the record that there's no cost for our districts to participate in this software, this monitoring, this benchmarking. And if not, then who's paying for this? Senator Goggin.
The program's already been paid for by the state, so it's available to our school districts now. It's just, this is just more of a way to strongly encourage our school districts to take advantage of the tools that are available to them free of charge, and go forward with that.
Thank you, Senator Goggin. It was in 2011, I think, that we passed one aspect, which was smart buildings. We felt all of our state buildings, government-owned buildings, should be smart buildings in how they use energy. And this is an extension, and thank you that we can take this into our public schools as well. Senator Uyghur.
Vote green.
That sounds like a good green vote, Senator Uyghur. Senator Anderson renews his motion that Senate File 1503 as amended be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The bill as amended has been laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Thank you, Senator Goggin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members.
Senator Rude, I believe you are next. You've been waiting so patiently in this. Not so patiently. Okay. Senator Rude, I'm just giving you the benefit of the doubt here. You know what it's like here. Deadlines a week, member. So, Senator Eichhorn, could you please move Senator Rude's bill be laid over for possible inclusion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senate File 156 is before us. Senator Rude, welcome to the committee. Do you have an amendment, Senator Rude?
I do, the A1 amendment. It's an author's amendment.
It's an author's amendment, members. We will ask that we grant Senator Rude this author's amendment, and then she can address her bill as amended. All those in favor of the A1 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The A1's been adopted. Senator Rude, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and my goal here is to get you back on track and on time. This is a Groundhog Day bill. It was included, it was passed last year. You loved it last year. You love it this year. It was included in the omnibus bill that was vetoed. And so what this does, it simply puts service cooperatives in the definition of the governmental unit. And in our amendment, by statute, charter schools must be listed. It must say charter schools. They can't be just rolled up into the schools. True. And so they would like to be included, and so we have to put them by statute, their name in there. So that's simply what it does. And so it's a very simple bill. I have quite a few people here who could testify if you have questions. Other than that, and would you like to say a couple words? I'm sorry.
Mr. Listug, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Dan Listug with Sourcewell. Sourcewell is the service cooperative based in north central Minnesota out of Staples. Thank you for your consideration of Senate File 156. As Senator Rude stated, the purpose of this bill is to specify that service cooperatives are included within the definition of government unit for purposes of the Joint Powers Statute 47159. Service cooperatives were created by the legislature as a unit of government in the late 1970s to provide services to government and school districts using cooperative and collaborative service delivery models. Under our enabling statute, we've given pretty broad latitude in the types of programs and services we can offer. And just to give you some context, some common examples include professional development for teachers, education curriculum development assistance, trainings and certification for law enforcement, city, county officials, cooperative purchasing services, and shared services or shared time arrangements. The purpose of this bill is to simply provide clarity to our members that service cooperatives are eligible to utilize joint powers agreement. That's essentially why we're here. We have to play a little bit of bingo in the statute books now, and this would give us a nice clean definition and clarity to our membership. So with that, we've been now through 6 committee hearings, both last session and this session. No opposition testimony has been offered, and I would be happy to stand for any questions and appreciate your support on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rude. I'm not clear on the path for this bill. I'm not sure which committees it's been through. We are ready to move that it be included, but let's see, Ms. Butler.
Madam Chair and members, if should be on the top of your bill. It was originally referred to local government and was heard there and reported to pass and referred here.
Thank you. So, Senator Rude, I think you have made all the trips, and Senator Eichhorn, well, some closing comments. Senator Rude.
I just appreciate your support. It's a very simple bill, and it really helps the service co-ops and the charter schools and everyone do a really good job. So we'd appreciate your support, and we can either go to the floor or be included in the omnibus bill, whichever you prefer, Madam Chair.
So, Senator Rude, we can dual track this then. It can be laid over for possible inclusion, or we also, members can vote to pass, and we'll send it to the floor. So I would make the motion that the bill be recommended to pass and sent to the Senate floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Senator Rude, the bill is dual-tracked.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Members, we have one bill left, and it's Senator Westrom. And I'm not seeing him here. We'll give our pages just a moment to try and find him. We know that it is committee deadline, and he's probably testifying in other committees. Fortunately, they're nearby, and we'll give him just a few moments. He's on his way. So while we're waiting for Senator Westrom, I do want to do one thing that I had forgotten during Senator Kent's bill. I needed to recognize the letters that had come into the committee. And these organizations sent letters. And that would be Black Men Teach in the Twin Cities. These are folks who are opposed to the Senator Kent bill, which is Senate File 1557. You would find Black Men Teach, MACT, Minnesota Association for Career and Technical Administrators, the Minneapolis Public Schools, Minnesota REA, Dr. Nolan spoke to that. Then we have the Cerisi Walburn Foundation for Children, Coalition for Asian American Leaders, Ed Allies, Educators for Excellence, Great Minnesota Schools, Hiawatha Collegiate School, KIPP Minnesota, Collegiate Prep Public Schools, the Minnesota Business Partnership, Minnesota Comeback, the Minnesota Independent School Forum, the Northeast College Prep, the Northeast College Prep, excuse me, I said that, Northside Achievement Zone, SFER Minnesota, Students for Education Reform Minnesota, Teach for America Twin Cities, TNTP Reimagining Learning, Way to Grow, Lakes Country Service Cooperative, Venture Academy, and Wildflower Schools Minnesota all sent letters of opposition to Senate File 1557. There were no letters in support that were received. And I believe Senator Westrom is coming. We're just in recess until Senator Westrom gets here. We think it should be shortly. Let's look at that bill. Maybe we have someone who could present that for him. Senator Dames, do you? Oh, let's bring up his testifiers. Senator Dames, would you like to chair or present the bill? Either way. I'll present.
Oh, thank you. Just a reminder that we are in recess, so we'll have to tap the gavel back.
Members, the committee is back in session. Senator Nelson, if you would like to present Senate File number 156.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to move the bill, and then here comes the bill author, Senate File 1938. Senator Westrom, we are ready for you. Here's your chair right here, and your testifiers, superintendent to the right, principal to the left.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Nelson, welcome to the committee, or Senator, I'm
Do
sorry.
I look like Senator Nelson?
Senator Westrom, my eyesight's about as bad as yours right now.
I was just going to blame you, accuse you of that.
Senator Westrom, your bill has been introduced and moved that it be passed and laid over for possible inclusion. So if you would like to go ahead and address your bill.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chair, with me is superintendent and principal from the Breckenridge High School, and they will be able to get more into details about this bill, but a few weeks ago, a month ago or so, at a town meeting, superintendent was at the meeting, as was the principal, I believe, and they were talking to me about an issue that they have, being a border city, Breckenridge, right across the river from Wahpeton, and regarding PSEO and students that might want career and technical education, and the closest they have is Moorhead, which some of their students go to in-state. But the closest they really have is across the border, about 2 or 3 miles, to North Dakota School of Science in Wahpeton, offering the career and technical courses that some students might be interested in. And so the reason this bill is in front of us is the unique situation that Breckenridge finds itself in to offer courses and PSEO options to their students that either have two choices. One, not to enroll because about an approximate an hour drive to Moorhead is quite an undertaking for a teenager or a high school student. And two, if they do, they're pretty much gone for the day. They don't participate part-time in the CTE and then part-time in the high school, where if they were able to go to have an arrangement with Wahpeton, with the NDSCS college there, it's quite likely the students might go for 2-3 hours a day or an hour a day and still enroll in a lot of the basics and curriculum at the high school in Breckenridge because of its close proximity. And so that in a nutshell is what a superintendent and the principal will visit with you about in further detail. And we had 2 students that were going to come, but because of questionable weather, they brought some testimony that Mr. Peterson, the principal, will offer and to the committee as well.
Thank you, Senator Westrom. We have Principal, would you like to start?
I can. Thank you very much. I
Principal
appreciate it.
Peterson,
Yes.
welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Madam
please.
Chair, Madam Chairman. My name is Craig Peterson. I'm the high school principal of Breckenridge, Minnesota, and I've been there for the past 2 years. In front of you is a bill that we would like your consideration on. And again, I thank you, committee members and Madam Chair, for having us. It is a privilege and honor to be here in front of you this afternoon. Education and government working together create opportunities for its citizens, and that's what we're hoping this bill would be able to do. With our education of our students, we want to, one, create opportunities for our kids in Breckenridge, create for a local workforce in Breckenridge, and move families forward, and a new opportunity for our sons and daughters. And we know this isn't the 1970s, 80s, and 90s education anymore, like we were in school. This is brand new. We're a time machine, not a time capsule. And we feel this bill that's in front of you this afternoon is that of a time machine, not a time capsule. Entering an agreement with NDSCS, this would not take away from any M-State kids, would not take any enrollment from M-State. Fergus Falls is closest to us, is a half hour away. Moorhead State is 45 minutes to the north of us. It's not going to take away any of those kids at all. It would not impact M-State at all. This would impact about 15 to 20 students for career and technical education only with our agreement with NDSCS. It's just like going across the river from Minneapolis to St. Paul. That's how close we are. Our kids currently, right now, we are doing a pilot program with NDSCS. We have 12 students that took a welding class first semester, and we had a manufacturing 120 class that goes into all NDSCS classes. We have an agreement with them right now. Our parents pay for it at that time. We have highly qualified staff that go with them. But I want to point out a letter that one of our students wrote. Again, he could not make it today due to weather concerns, but he wrote it to Representative Backer and Representative Westrom. I'm part of 12 students that had the privilege to enroll in a dual credit class for welding and manufacturing credits. This opportunity has brought many benefits to me and my classmates. For example, the shop at our high school has 4 old welding stations, making it very difficult to keep everyone engaged in activity at the same time. This leads to students wasting time and usually valuable class time waiting for their turn to weld. But when we go over to NDSCS, the local college, there are 32 welding stations. Each welding station is equipped to produce a different variety of welds, unlike the ones you see at high school. This keeps students engaged and constantly learning by experience. Furthermore, going over to college provides a professor that specializes in this area that you are learning, giving a deeper understanding of a topic. The program has allowed me to learn skills otherwise unobtainable at high school, again, creating opportunities, and has heavily benefited everyone involved in it. With the expansion of this service to become free to qualified students, the amount of appreciation from the student body would be immeasurable. Respectfully, Austin, one of our junior students who would be impacted next year as a senior. And I do want to talk about the last point before Superintendent Cordes goes on is engagement with our students. Again, we're a time machine, not a time capsule. Breckenridge, we believe in that of active classroom, 21st century skills, 21st century learning. And our engagement with our students, I'm literally seeing as a principal kids sprinting out of our building to get to this welding class. And some of the kids that we have, again, they're in good standing, no discipline issues. It's a privilege, not a right. They get to go do this if they stay in good standing with us. And all of our students, we have 12 that have went through the program. So again, I ask you, education and government working together, to consider this bill for passage for our Breckenridge students for career tech opportunities. Again, it's not going to impact M-State at all. And it's to create jobs for our families and workforce in Breckenridge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Do you happen to know of those 12 students who took the PSEO in Breckenridge and who took the welding class? If they've graduated, how many?
This is our first year that we've done it.
Okay.
Yep, this is our first, so we're literally in semester 2. So we did it 6 months, so we're semester 2 right now. So we did welding the first semester. We're in second semester right now, manufacturing class. We have a couple seniors in there, but we specifically designed it for juniors. So we have probably 10 junior boys, and they are boys, and one girl, I should say, too, in the class. And you had to be in one to get to the other. So they would have the opportunity next year as seniors. So to answer your question, Madam Chair, would be not yet. I can say it like that.
Yes,
So
that
not
was
yet.
going to be my question. And my ask would be, should something like this go forward, it's important for us to know when those students graduate. Many schools do a annual survey of those students to see where are those students today.
Yep.
And of course, I'd be interested in training students who stay in Minnesota.
Yes.
For those great jobs.
And those 3 students that were to come testify this afternoon in front of you would have been students that would attend NDSCS as well and stay in our local region and be in Minnesota, whether it's at Breckenridge or in Wapanet as plumbers. Construction management was one student, electricians, or that of ranch management and farmers as well.
It sounds like a terrific program. Thank you, Principal. So, before we get to Superintendent Cordes, we do have an A1 amendment, Senator Westrom, that I would like to offer, and we'll have staff explain that. I know that you've worked on this just to tighten up that agreement language. Mr. Arneson, to the A1 amendment.
Madam Chair and members, we confirmed with the bill author that the intent is to essentially engage in PSEO courses according to agreements. So these would be the sorts of PSEO arrangements where the district enters into a formal agreement with a post-secondary institution, and under these arrangements, the district typically negotiates the fee, and the student counts remain on the district books for the purposes of Minnesota state aids and levies. And I believe this is consistent with the author's intent.
Thank you. Senator
That is
Westrom?
correct. That is correct, Madam Chair, as staff has amply put it out. Superintendent Cordes will affirm, but by email, she was engaged in the discussion.
Thank you, Senator Westrom. All in favor of the A1 amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Your amendment is adopted. Superintendent, to the bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee. And I just, Diane Cordes, Superintendent, Breckenridge Schools. Just to explain a little further, carrying on a little bit with notes that our principal made, I want to say that the reason our students this year, first and second semester, could participate with NDSCS is because there was a grant written by by NDSCS to allow our students to participate. So you might be wondering, well, if you did it this year, why can't you do it in the future? So I just want to be clear that that was on a grant. That grant is running out, and it was one-time funding. We used that as a pilot to see if this might be something that would make sense for our district and our students moving forward in the future. And that's why we're here today, because we've seen the good work and the results of the pilot study, and so believe it could be the right thing for our students. The agreement would be specific, I want to be very clear about this, specific to Breckenridge public school students, juniors and seniors, and it would be for career and tech education classes only. So once again, our ability to offer concurrent enrollment classes, more of those liberal arts classes that we already have availability through PSEO with other Minnesota partners, including M-State, would not be impacted. These students would be different students than the type that would take advantage of those other PSEO arrangements that we already have available to us. Another thing I want to point out is that something unique, very unique, we believe, to Breckenridge and Wahpeton is that we are the only border communities. So Breckenridge, the only border community in the state of Minnesota where the Minnesota community does not have a post-secondary school and the outstate community does. And so that's what makes this a little bit unique, that we don't have another option within our own community for our students to attend. All other border communities, the Minnesota sister community, if you will, has at least one option for kids. And so our kids have to travel a distance. And again, that's why this is unique. We believe just to Breckenridge, it's narrow, is my point. We're not opening a big can of worms here. Our school board members wanted you to know that they're in full support of this and see the value, as is the president, Dr. John Richmond of the North Dakota School of Science, in full support of this. And you'll note that in a packet that you received earlier that there is a letter of support from Dr. Richmond talking about the benefits that he sees. Breckenridge Public Schools, small school, aging facilities, and so we have looked at many different options for how to utilize other resources to offer career and tech ed courses to our students. But because of space limitations and because of financial limitations, we will never in Breckenridge be able to offer within our own school building walls and district walls the opportunity for the workforce enhancement that these career and tech ed classes could offer to our students. My point in bringing that to your attention is that, yes, we may be sending 10 or 12 students and the funding for the few for the classes that they take outside of Minnesota, but our belief is that if we can educate those kids very close to our home community, they will come back and live in our community, and so those tax dollars will return to Minnesota and more importantly to us, return to our region where those students then will live in our communities and provide desperately needed workforce. You'll note also in your packet that our economic development CEO, Justin Neppel, noted that we have about 500 jobs in our region, manufacturing, agricultural jobs that the employers can't hire because we don't have the workforce available. And so our business partners are very, very interested in having this happen for our students because they believe this could help train a workforce that could stay in our communities and live in our communities. And the last thing that I would just point out, this is kind of hot off the press information for us, but that also just is concerning at our district level is that now our agricultural teacher is choosing to leave our district and actually move closer to the metro area, happens to be where his wife's family is from. And so now we will be faced with trying to hire a new ag teacher. We are very concerned about getting any applicants at all. And so, again, we're faced with, if we can't replace that person, then some of the few career and tech educational classes that we are offering in our district would go by the wayside because we would lose that teacher. That's a constant battle that we face in rural Minnesota, is hiring career and tech education licensed teachers. And so that's something new on our plate that we're looking at, just bringing more emphasis to why we would ask you to consider this bill for Breckenridge.
Thank you. Do you have any Tier 1 teachers?
We do have 2 Tier 1 teachers in the area of special education. Again, we had 2 openings advertised and got no applicants. We got no qualified special education applicants.
Thank you. Just a continuing conversation from before. I see you have another testifier, Senator Westrom. Dr. Nolan, third time up here. You're our most frequent testifier today.
Yes,
Welcome.
frequent flyer. Fred Nolan, MREA. I feel like I'm bowling anchor on a long day here. I want to thank Senator Westrom, Superintendent Cordes, and everyone involved for being pragmatic to provide opportunities for students. MREA puts learners first and supports militant pragmatism on students' behalf. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan. Any further testimony, pro or con? And then members, any questions or comments? Senator Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sitting here in disbelief, not questioning what you said. I can't imagine you had 3 teacher openings that not one person applied for, right?
In their licensed area.
Correct.
That is correct.
Tier 4 person.
Yes, that is correct.
That's just, I don't even know what to say. Thank goodness then in this example for the licensure system that we created.
I would agree with that.
Thank you. Any further comments, member? Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And what I'm going to say is kind of a double standard in some ways, because I've been a longtime supporter of PSEO and dual enrollment. I was on the University of Minnesota College and the Schools Board and so on. We're carving out an exception, and many times when you carve out exceptions, it leads to precedents. Last year, we had a bill that was proposed that would open up PSEO to virtually any college university within the 5-state area or maybe beyond. And that's Minnesota taxpayers' dollars going to other state institutions. We don't know what they're going to charge. We don't have control over that. I appreciate your situation, and I can understand that you've got a great option there and it's great for kids. But I'm just caution on that issue that we are setting a precedent and where that might lead to. You've already indicated that agricultural program is going to be a problem. Tongue-in-cheek, I would say maybe you should join the Wahpeton Public Schools. You're not smiling, Superintendent. But I'm wondering, have you looked at other options?
Yes.
Joint powers agreements. You've got other kinds of options. Sounds like you have taken a look at. It's a great opportunity for kids. I never want to stand in the way of that, but I'm just concerned about we're carving out an exception. Exceptions sometimes lead to precedents, and then where does that lead us to in the years ahead? So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Superintendent or principal, did you have a comment?
Could I please, Madam Chair?
Yes, Superintendent.
First, I want to say, Senator, that I do appreciate your position, because as a superintendent, I get that when you make an exception for one, it can lead down the road. I hear you loud and clear, I do. So I want you to know that we've examined, we believe, looked at every option that we could think of with partnering with neighboring districts. We've looked at the opportunity that has been made available, not perfect, but at least one small option where there are mobile learning labs that are sometimes available. The problem is we need the certified, we need somebody to teach it. So it's a twofold issue. It's not just the labs, but it's also the certified teachers to teach it. And so, I appreciate your comment, and I just want you to know that we feel that we've turned over every stone we can think of, and that's why we're here.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Dames.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I just want to make a comment that, what you're facing is not that uncommon in rural Minnesota. And it's sometimes hard for metro people to understand that we really face this on a daily basis. And this is going on, and that's why you're here today, because we have to try to solve some of those issues. And I'm glad that the Tier 1 is working for you, and hopefully you'll find an ag teacher, but if not, there will be some options there that way. But this is not uncommon. This happens quite frequently in rural Minnesota, where we cannot find Tier 4 teachers, and we have to resort to some of the other options that we have. So thank you very much for, first of all, doing this and for bringing this bill.
Closing comments, Senator Westrom.
Yeah, Madam Chair, and I was going to respond to Senator Clausen just to maybe give him a little more comfort, but I certainly understand his comments, and it was some of my first comments and questions, frankly, with the superintendent at my town meeting. But as you look at it, and one of the amendments which we did would have the funds going to the school, and they would enter into the curriculum arrangement with Wahpeton or the North Dakota School of Science. And so Senator Clausen, the school would still be receiving the revenue. It's a matter of them making an arrangement with a school, a college 2-3 miles away from them to provide that narrow curriculum that they can't provide as good or an alternative that would meet what they can get in Wahpeton. And so I was having this discussion with the principal and superintendent before we had the meeting, and I shared with you, Madam Chair and committee, the analogy. We give the schools the per pupil aid and the funding for the school students. They do buy services out of state at times. I'm sure not a practice if they can find it close and at home, but desks or more routinely the food service. And I know at my hometown, our food service truck, I believe, comes out of the Fargo area as part of the routes. And so similar to that, they would be paying a food provider that's out of state if that's the food provider that services our region of the state. So if that helps you think of it, I don't think the precedent is a first of its kind, but I also don't think it's a slippery slope given the proximity to Breckenridge and Wahpeton. And mind you, Madam Chair and committee members, the mayor of Breckenridge, the former mayor, used to remind me often 50 years ago, Breckenridge was the large town, Wahpeton was the small town. In 50 years, with lots of reasons involved, but a border city, the city of Wahpeton is probably 3 times the size of Breckenridge now. And so that's kind of the challenge that we face, but you know what? Wahpeton has a very, very well-respected college in our region. Many students from our area go there for a very good technical education, and as I looked at it, I thought, you know what? This is about the student, and I applaud the administrators in the city of Breckenridge, or the school of Breckenridge, for being willing to look at this as an innovative way to benefit the students, because that's what their focus is really about.
Thank you. Senator Westrom. I'll renew my motion that Senate File, let's find that number, Senate File 1938 as amended be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Members, I want to thank you for your time. We have hit or are near our deadline. You've heard a lot of bills. Our next meeting is Monday the 18th, at which time we will hear more bills. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Yes, thank you.